All right, what's going on? 3 o'clock. Chiefs top the 49ers in overtime 25-22 to win Super Bowl 58. Back-to-back titles for KC in the second Super Bowl to reach overtime. The MVP, Patrick Mahomes, after the game.
Not only the greatness that we have on the field, but the way that we've done it. I mean, I feel like we enjoy it every single day. We have fun. We play hard. And it's not always pretty, but we just continue to fight to the very end. And
Chiefs were the winning ticket at +2, and the game went under with the total set at 47.5. Kansas City will now pursue a three-peat, something that's never been done in the Super Bowl era. And the Niners open as favorites to win Super Bowl 59. The Trailblazers get one more night off. They have two more games before the All-Star break, both against Minnesota tomorrow night and Thursday. Tip-off will be at 7. I'll have game day at 4:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Ryan Rupert has been assigned to Rip City Remix. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad's next. We'll head to San Francisco and talk with Evan Giddings at 4:20. And Brian O. Fox Sports Radio recaps the Super Bowl at 5:20. All right, back-to-back championships for the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid and company in a thrilling overtime game last night down in Las Vegas. I don't know how you felt, Godfather. The first half, pretty boring with very little action. But as we entered into the fourth quarter when both offenses got things going, and then the overtime period, I was trying to imagine what it would be like to be a 49er Chief fan. Like, my stomach would be in knots trying to see how that game was going to unfold. But I thought, all in all, terrific show, great game, and a great performance once again by Patrick Mahomes. And really, there were a number of 49ers as well who showed out and played a big-time game. But I thought it was terrific. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did not ever expect to see a scoreless first quarter in a Super Bowl. Usually,
Stunning.
Teams come in with that script. That's usually dynamite. Their first possession of the game, usually you get a field goal or a touchdown or something. Nothing after one was terrible, really. But second half was really good. And I think I agree. All in all, a very suspenseful game toward the end, back and forth. And look, I'm a product of the early days of the Super Bowl when it seemed like about 9 times out of 10 the games were blowouts.
Yeah.
You remember those days, or kind of remember them, where almost every year it was a blowout.
Every single year, the NFC dominated the AFC in the early part of my life, and the Denver Broncos were the ones who got over and broke the spell. And ever since that point, into the 2000s up until now, we've had a lot of great, close games that come down to the final possession. And that's the way you want it to be on that type of stage with that type of game. And I thought, really, the 49ers defense, for the most part, was terrific. I thought the Chiefs, the way they bounced back and made big plays down the stretch was awesome. We saw some terrific kicks from long distance last night. You had a little bit of everything in this game.
You know, Chad, I was watching it with an old friend of mine, and we were lamenting. We were talking about how in the old days, a 40-yard field goal was pretty good. 45 was real good. 50-yarders consistently. I mean, it's amazing how good these guys have gotten. They're
terrific.
incredible.
Yeah, 50-yarders not even in question
No.
anymore. You expect them to make it, which is wild.
Automatic.
I really felt like the game last night, as I was watching it, it felt like San Francisco was in control of the game and outplayed Kansas City for the majority of the game.
Mm-hmm.
They just couldn't cash in on the opportunities they had.
Yeah, they left a lot of points on the table, I thought. It was, from their standpoint, too bad because they did. They dominated really most of the first half, and then at halftime, the lead was not imposing in any way. It was, again, first drive of the game, they're going right down the field. Their script was terrific, and then they fumble, and everything just kind of stalled after that.
Yeah, and if you're the Chiefs, you go into halftime down 7 at 10-3, and you've got Patrick Mahomes. They hadn't played well at all. I think they had to feel good about that situation, knowing, hey, we still got some good football in front of us. We've been dominated on the line of scrimmage. We haven't done a darn thing, and yet we're only down one score.
Yeah, and then you go out and you make a pick off Mahomes, which happens about once every month and a half in the postseason, and you don't do anything with it. When he throws a pick, that's got to be points for you, because it's just such a rarity that you get a shorter field, you get your opportunity, and I think that was a 3-and-out, wasn't it?
It was. It was quick, and Kansas City was able – I thought their defense really stiffened there in the second half and played terrific.
Oh, yeah.
And I was impressed with the way they were able to lock down and control the run game. The Chiefs actually outrushed the 49ers last night, which was impressive, and a lot of that due to Mahomes and what he did late in the game. The part that surprised me the most, and we talked about this going into the game, we talked about it on Friday in the cooler out at Jackson's Food Store, that the key to this game was going to be for the 49ers, sticking with the run, being patient, and understanding that you would have stretches where you only get a couple of yards, but the consistency of doing it and allowing your offensive line to work, eventually McCaffrey would break that.
Yeah.
But that long stretch in the third quarter and to start the second half where the 49ers had 9 plays, 8 of which were passes. One run. Shanahan got away from the game plan, and that's what killed them because once you put Purdy in a situation where he's dropping back and Kansas City's starting to get more control of the line and better with their defense and where they want to be, I thought that really changed the game and gave Kansas City some confidence moving forward there in the second half.
Yeah, Chad, we've talked about it before, but even the so-called genius offensive coordinators, they get impatient once in a while.
Yeah.
They just can't stick with the running game even though it's working. What is that?
It's crazy. I don't understand why it's so hard to stick with that because he comes out of the Shanahan offense. His dad did it to the best of them where they run the football and you stay patient with the run. And his dad did it all the time with Terrell Davis, and they would end up winning games late in the second half because those runs that were 2 and 3 yards would start to become 5 and 10 yards because you start to wear the defense out.
It's one of those things where the more you run, usually the better you will run because you do. You not only tire them out, I think it's a psychological thing. Nobody wants to have that big truck running over them all the time. You don't want to feel like you're getting bullied by the offense, and that's what you're doing. You're bullying them when you can run on them.
The other thing I would say about Shanahan, and I'm not a offensive guru, but his quarterback, Brock Purdy's got some nifty ability with his legs. He can move around and buy some time, and I would like to see them actually have some designed rollouts to get him in a position to where he could use his feet a little bit more because he's capable of putting some stress on the defense, but the offense never calls for that. And that's unfortunate because Purdy's got more to offer than just going out there and throwing short passes or medium-range passes and being accurate. He's proven that he can be nifty with his feet, so try to get him in a position to utilize that a little bit more in the future maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Chad, especially when the other team's playing man-to-man defense.
Yeah.
So when you take the receivers long, the DBs all have their back turned to the line of scrimmage. And if you can intentionally call running plays, a quarterback draw even, they didn't run one of those the whole game. I just think he's not Mahomes when it comes to running the football, but he can pick up a first down for you and get you 10 yards maybe sometime if you give him the opportunity and call a run and block for it a little bit. But they didn't show that at all. Anything he made with his wheels was just off a scramble, off a pass.
And props to Steve Spagnuolo. We talked about him last week. The Chiefs'
yeah.
defense, so good. They only have a couple of names that everyone's familiar with, Chris Jones being one of those guys. He's a beast, and he was big late in that game. But I thought Spagnuolo in the second half, very timely with his blitzing and calling the right blitz at the right time to force the football out of Purdy's hands. And by doing that, he was able to give himself or the offense more chances to go out there and score. Even late in the game when the 49ers could have converted a first down, bled out the clock, and kicked a field goal to win it. It was a key blitz on third down that forced it out of Purdy's hands. They have to settle for the field goal. But having that type of timing and that type of smarts in those situations to know your personnel and know what type of plays work, I thought Spagnuolo in the second half was spot on.
He was, and he's blessed with a couple of really good corners, don't you think? Those guys they're pretty good.
Great secondary.
Yes, you can cover man-to-man with his guys, which is a big edge in the league right now at this time.
Yes. And what I love about games like this, the teams that win, normally it's their stars that show out. Travis Kelce, 1 catch for like 1 yard in the first half. He finished the game with 9 receptions and was the leading receiver in the entire game. The way he was able to work himself into positions late in the game to get open and make plays, they needed him in the offense, and yet he showed up late once again. He and Mahomes both late in the fourth and in overtime were monsters. But I don't know how Travis Kelce does it. He was non-existent in the first half, and then he just continues to work his magic, and eventually, boom, they start finding him, and he makes plays.
I think maybe it was assaulting his head coach. Maybe it got a few more. Maybe he got a few more balls thrown his way.
That was weird. That made me uncomfortable.
Yes,
because Andy Reid's a nice guy.
I know it wasn't a good look at all.
What was he saying? Do we know?
I saw speculation. It was just get me in the game and give me the ball. We'll score. And he had been out. You know, that was the play that was a fumble, I think. And he had been out, and supposedly they take him out on some running plays because he's not as good a run blocker as they have at the tight end position.
My goodness. We'll get to that scuff up between Andy Reid and Travis Kelce coming up at 3:45. But when we got to come back, a couple of things. One, I was confused as to what was going on in the overtime period, and I'll explain that. But also we're going to hear from Kyle Shanahan on his decision-making in the overtime period to take the football instead of kicking it away. Was it the right decision? What was the logic behind that? We'll get to that. If you want to jump on board, you'll find Dwight. He's on Twitter, at Dwight Jaynes. You'll find me on X, at Chad in Rip City. The telephone number here, 503-248-0620. Again, we'll go to San Francisco at 4:20 and talk with Evan Giddings. He's with 95.7 The Game. And Brian O, Fox Sports Radio, recapping the Super Bowl at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. I'm not going to lie, Godfather. I got pretty excited last night when I saw John Elway roll out with the Super Bowl trophy.
That's classic. Even though he was presenting it to the Kansas City Chiefs?
I know. Just seeing him made me happy. I had no idea he was there, and all of a sudden he's there holding the Lombardi. I'm like, what in the world's going on here? Did Broncos just win the Super Bowl again? And it was funny because right as he popped on screen, my phone lit up, and I had something along the lines of, and it was the same with all 5 texts, hey, at least your boy doesn't look drunk tonight. Because the last time I saw him, when I interviewed him down there at Stanford when they retired his jersey, when he came off the field, I was nervous, and then I realized that he may have had a couple of silver bullets, and I was like, oh, he's good right now. He's all greased up for me. So John Elway with the Lombardi, very bizarre. That had to feel good for Chief fans. They take out the 49ers again, and Mr. Ed is delivering them the Lombardi.
I was just going to say, he's still got all those teeth, Chad.
So good. Not a bad night for Taylor Swift. In fact, Taylor Swift right now having the time of her life. She's a billionaire coming off the most successful tour of like ever known to man, and her boyfriend wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much better than that. Good gracious.
When's he going to propose? Or when is she going to propose? I don't know who proposes in this deal.
There's no way she would do that.
Yeah.
No way. She's above that. If it gets to that point, he will propose. But they looked like they're having a good time last night. I can't imagine how great that would be. Win the Super Bowl, you're in Las Vegas. You just walk across the freeway and boom, it's party on.
Yeah.
Everything's just set up for you. That was a great setting for a Super Bowl. The whole scene, the whole thing. It was awesome. And I can't believe the NFL, just 10 years ago, Goodell's like, we're not into the gambling business. That's not part of what we do. And now they're just fully embraced.
Yeah.
Anytime these owners or commissioners see how much money can be made with something, it changes the way they see things real quick, doesn't it?
It's what it's all about, for sure.
All right. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how you all felt like this, but I felt like this last night. Again, I was down at Spirit Mountain hosting the Super Bowl party, so I couldn't hear everything that was going on in terms of the communication between Nance and Romo, which is probably a good thing.
Yes.
Because he was out of control again.
Yes. Not as bad. I think somebody talked to him. For most of the game, he was somewhat restrained. Not for you or me or anybody else, but for him, it was somewhat restrained.
Okay. He was singing during the broadcast, though. What are you doing, Tony? He and Jim. He's lucky that Jim Nance loves him. He loves him. Nance
he
loves
may
Romo.
not still love him after that, after the end of that game.
Let's take a listen to that real quick. As a play-by-play guy, what you don't want is someone butchering your call like this. Too much, Tony. Too much.
Shut up.
Too much.
Yeah, and that's the time where the veteran broadcasters, Vince Scully, Joe Buck.
Let it breathe.
Yeah. Just stand back. Let the crowd carry it for a few minutes because that's exciting, right?
Yes. So in the overtime period, I'm watching the 49ers go down. I'm like, holy crap, they're going to score a touchdown and win the game. They're going to score here and win the game. And they settle for the field goal, and the Chiefs get the ball, and they drive down. They're in a position to score, and it's under a minute to go in the quarter, the overtime period. I'm like, call timeout. What are you doing? You're going to let the time run out. I did not know and understand the rules and the rule changes. One, that a team can score a touchdown and the other team still gets a possession.
Right.
I had forgotten about that. And also, I didn't realize that when that first overtime period ends, they don't start over with a brand new overtime period. It just continues on into another quarter.
Yeah.
I was totally unaware and completely confused. And it turns out that I wasn't the only one because it appears that a lot of the fans, the analysts, I heard Steve Young this morning. I don't think he really knew what was going on. And the 49ers, you listen to their players after the game, they were unaware of what was going on. I want to play this for you. This is Kyle Shanahan on his decision to receive the football instead of kick it away. Because in the old overtime system or the regular season system, a team that scores a touchdown first on that first drive, you win the game. It's
a
over.
walk-off.
It's a walk-off. So under those circumstances, you would want the ball first because you have a chance to go down and win the game. But if every team gets a possession, wouldn't you want to wait and see what the other team does and then get the ball so you know what you have to deal with, right?
Yeah, you not only know what you need, but if the other team scores a touchdown, you know now that you have to go for it on fourth down. It gives you, in essence, another down.
Yes, because if you're down by 3, as the Chiefs were, and we saw them do it on that drive, they went for it on fourth down. If you take the ball first and you don't pick up the first down on third, you're not going to go for it on fourth unless it's fourth and inches, or if you're in a better position on the field, you're probably not going to risk it, and you're going to punt it away, and the other team can then win.
Yeah.
So here's Kyle Shanahan after the game on that decision to take the ball in overtime.
With the new rules for overtime, what goes into the decision to take the ball first?
That's just something we talked about with, none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go in, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
All right, there's Kyle Shanahan. What do you think about his logic about getting the ball in that third possession to where it's a sudden death situation, you can win it with the field goal?
Yeah, I don't know what the analytics told him, Chad, but you've made this point several times. You can look at analytics all you want, but there has to be some sort of feel for what's going on in this particular game and who you're playing against.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt you're playing against Patrick Mahomes here. You think you're going to keep him off the scoreboard or even hold him to 3 points? I don't see it. And so if you get the ball first, you better get a touchdown. If you don't, you're doomed. I felt that right when they went for the field goal.
What about the idea that his defense was gassed because they had just been on the field trying to prevent Mahomes from getting in before the end of regulation?
I think that's somewhat of a legit proposition, but I think as it proved out, even with a rest, and his defense got to rest for quite a while his offense went down the field for the field goal. Even then, they couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes, right?
That's how I looked at it. Again, I'm not a coach, so I don't look at it the way they do, and maybe I don't have the confidence that they do, but after watching Mahomes in the fourth quarter and the way the game ended, I had zero doubt in my mind that when they got the ball in overtime, that they were going to go down and get a touchdown. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
You knew it. I knew it. I'm sure Shacker knew it.
Well, it has to be some sort of recognition of who you're playing against. This guy's not your average quarterback. He's one of the greatest of all time, and he's won now 3 Super Bowls, for crying out loud. Don't put the game in his hands. That's the worst thing to do, right? I wouldn't even want my defense deciding this game. I would say I'll take the ball second, then at least my offense will be deciding the game, not my defense.
Man, Patrick Mahomes was so good late in that game. Just another way you can identify a great player. They have an ability to put together 2.5, 3 quarters of awful play, or where they're not really getting anything going, and then all of a sudden they can catch fire.
Yeah.
And once Mahomes got it going, I mean, he was spot on with the run and the pass. But he doesn't run to run. He only runs when it's available and it's the right time. He knows when to run.
And, I mean, the one he had was a scripted run, pretty much. Because I remember he said, yeah, okay, but if it's not there, I'm running.
Yeah.
It was one of those read option things where he could have handed the ball off. But I think he knew in his mind all along, I'm running this thing.
Do you think it's possible that Shanahan was unaware of the rules?
I do think it's possible. And then when he got a chance to meet with his guys after the game and somebody said, hey, the rule is this. If he knew the rule, why wasn't it communicated to his players? Because they interviewed a lot of players who said they had no idea. It would have been hilarious if the 49ers had scored a touchdown on their first possession and cleared the bench, ran onto the field thinking they won the Super Bowl. And they didn't, because now they have to kick off.
But on the flip side, it sounded like the Chiefs knew exactly what the rules were and had a plan for it.
Mahomes said they had been going over that since training camp, that they were going to, what they would do is take the ball second. If they needed a touchdown, they'd go down and get a touchdown. And the kicker is, he said, if we score, we're going for 2. And I'm sure with the preparation Andy Reid does, they already knew what play they were going to run. So, that's called preparation for a game.
Yeah, that would be very egregious for a head coach not to understand the rules.
Yeah.
And it would be really poor for the entire staff not to be prepared for that moment. But the reason why I suggest it's a possibility is because his players were unaware.
Yeah.
And you know how these coaches are, especially Shanahan, details. It's all about the details for these guys. So it's hard for me to imagine Shanahan, if he was aware of something, not laying out the plan, the details, how they would handle that situation and know exactly what they wanted to do.
I listened to a lot of interviews this morning of players who weren't in the game, and they found it hard to believe that this hadn't been communicated to the players in the game. They couldn't believe that. And some of them didn't know the rule either, but they thought, if I'm playing in the game, somebody should have told me that rule, because that's a pretty important thing.
My goodness. What did you think about the play of Brock Purdy?
I thought he was good, Chad. He's 24 years old in his second year in the league. I thought that was a very good performance. He made some tough throws. He's not playing against the 49er defense. He's playing against the Chiefs defense, that man-to-man coverage in the secondary. He had a lot of small windows to hit. He did it for the most part. 3 come-from-behind drives in the fourth quarter. And when he left the field in the fourth quarter and in overtime, he had given his team a lead. If the defense could have held him, they win the game. And now, hey, Brock Purdy won a Super Bowl. They didn't, though. So, then you got to say, well, it would have been nice if he'd have gotten him into the end zone one of those times instead of settling for field goals.
Or to convert the third down so they could bleed the clock
Right.
and kick the field goal to win.
Yeah, either way. But, yeah, and that's fair. That's fair criticism. I agree with that. But I think he played well enough they could have won. But their defense at the end of the game just – I just felt Kansas City was going to score a touchdown every time they had the ball thereafter.
Yeah, that was tough. I think for Brock Purdy, I didn't think he played poorly. I thought he was okay. The third down numbers weren't good. Settling for field goals in those spots when you're going up against Mahomes is tough. I mean, he was okay. I don't think his coach helped him out. I thought the play calling in the second half, not sticking with the run, was catastrophic because you kept the Chiefs in a position to strike, and that was a problem. And then you get the turnover, and the Chiefs are able to capitalize right away.
All last week, you and I were saying, if the 49ers can't run the ball, they're going to lose the game. Well, I never thought there would be a situation where the 49ers didn't try to run the ball. I mean, what are you doing? All their passing stuff in that system comes off play action. It's all play action. You've got to run the ball effectively to make that work. So not even attempting a running play is not going to work well.
Yeah, it's just tough. When you're playing against Mahomes as a defensive coordinator, you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place because if you blitz him, he's probably going to burn you. If you play zone, he'll pick you apart. You're just in a tough spot. The advantage of going up against a guy like Purdy is that they had tremendous success with their blitzes. And if you look at his numbers over the 2 playoff games and into the Super Bowl, his dropback rate was very poor. So you've got to make sure that your game plan is sound and you don't get away from that to give him all the support that's necessary.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I do think he performed better against that defense than Lamar Jackson did. Lamar Jackson that was awful. So he was better there. I just think I put a lot of it on Kyle Shanahan. I don't understand why when you have a running back like they have, I mean, McCaffrey's great. He's the best. He's got to have the ball more than he had it.
They held him to 3.6 yards per carry.
That's
McCaffrey.
amazing.
I agree with what Steve Young said. You look at the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, you've got these elite quarterbacks. We're just in a phase right now where these guys are just going to trade Super Bowls if they can get past Mahomes. If you don't have one of those top-line quarterbacks and you get yourself into a position to go up against a team like that, you're going to be up against it. It's just tough. It's tough to go up against a team like that. The Chiefs did not play a good offensive game yesterday, but late in the game when they needed to make the plays, they did. I don't know how you do it. Mahomes is going to get back there again and again and again. He's got, 10 years left probably?
No, at least.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's just really tough. In today's NFL, if you don't have a big-time quarterback, it's going to be tough to win a championship because those guys, Mahomes is a freak. He's a freak. I don't know what you do, Godfather, but, I thought the 49ers, their defense, for the most part, played extremely well. I thought Bosa was terrific. I thought Fred Warner was a beast. He had a tremendous football game, had a great impact on Travis Kelce throughout the game until late.
By the way, Chad, it hurt them a lot when Greenlaw went out of the game. I mean, the guy that replaced him was targeted 9 times, 9 completions. And, I mean, he's a great linebacker, too. And he tore his Achilles running onto the field.
Horrible. I can't imagine being in that spot and suffering that injury.
That way, yeah.
I think one of his teammates, it might have been Kittle, someone said, he needs to get a hold of Aaron Rodgers and find out how to get that thing healed up quick.
That's right.
Hey, Aaron, what's the key here? What do I need to do? Get me back on the field. That was crazy. I think Kyle Shanahan probably shoulders the majority of the blame for that loss. The play calling and getting away from the game plan in the third quarter, I'll never understand that. You got to run the football against that team. Their weakness is their run defense, and you get away from that, and you put your quarterback in a position to try and do too much. I don't understand it.
I put that on him, Chad, and I also put on him the decision to take the ball first in overtime.
That's him.
I think that was a damaging choice.
And it may or may not be fair, and this is something that he's going to have to try and shake, but he's now associated with 3 massive collapses in the Super Bowl. He had a double-digit lead against the Chiefs twice in the second half, and then he was, the offensive coordinator for the Falcons that had that 28-3 lead. He was there. He's a big part of that. He's got to shake that. These coaches, I don't understand the decision-making sometimes. Why do they make it so hard on themselves? First 9 plays, 8 passes, 1 run?
I know. What is that about?
What are you doing, coach? Brutal. But for the Chiefs, now they're chasing greatness, and they're going to go for a 3-peat next year, and Mahomes talked about it.
Are you also chasing the quarterback greats of this game? Because there's been so much discussion about now Mahomes in there with Brady. You got to hear some of it.
Yeah, I hear it. I mean, to me, it's always going to be tough because Brady beat me in the Super Bowl. That's the one thing you always have in my head. But it gives me something to strive for every single day is chasing greatness. And whenever I'm tired, I might not want to work out. I know that I have to do it in order to be in these moments like this. And so I know it's a long ways away. And it's not something that I'm like, I need to get 7 Super Bowls right now. But it does give me that added motivation to continue to be great every single day.
You know what's scary about him, Godfather? He hasn't even peaked yet.
I think what's scariest about him is his voice, Chad.
It's a creepy voice.
Yeah.
But he's going to get better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, gosh. That's the thing about quarterbacks. Of all the positions, it seems like they get better continually. Not necessarily physically, but their mental progress makes up for whatever they lose physically. You saw that with Brady. He wasn't the same athlete. And he wasn't a great athlete anyway, but he wasn't the same athlete later in his career. But he was so much smarter. Manning was the same way. I mean, good, great. Peyton Manning mentally just took teams apart.
So next year, the Chiefs, their young receivers will have more experience.
Yeah, they hope they wouldn't drop as many as they did this year.
Their defense, which is young, will have a lot of playmakers back. And you'll have the brain trust of Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, what about that weird bump and yell match between Kelce and Andy Reid? We'll hear Kelce's response on that, and we'll break it down. That's Dwight. I'm Chad. You got the Rip City Drive. We're going to go to San Francisco at 4:20, and then Brian O, Fox Sports Radio, stops by at 5:20. All right, here's a Q&A with Travis Kelce following the game on that bump on Andy Reid and the yelling match that was picked up on the cameras.
When you and Andy Reid had that, what I call a very engaging conversation.
Oh, you guys saw that?
What was the conversation about? Was
there
it?
were a few cameras.
I mean, was it? Hey, I need the ball. I can help us win. What was that about?
Man, it was. I'm gonna keep it between us unless my mic'd up tells the world. But I was just telling him how much I love him.
What did you think about that whole situation there with Kelce and Reid? It
Well,
made me uncomfortable.
It wasn't a love tap. Let's put it that way.
No.
No, I think it was a real bad look. I don't think you want that on your sidelines. And I mean, come on, Andy's not a spring chicken here. You know, I mean, you don't want to be bumping him. He was off balance anyway. What if he knocked him down? Good grief.
John Middlecoff, who I worked with in San Francisco, he spent time and has spent a lot of time around Andy Reid during his time with the Eagles. And he said one thing that Reid's really good about is dealing with confrontation and moving past it. He doesn't hold on to those moments and harbor bad feelings. He's able to deal with it. He can joke about it and move on, and it helps diffuse situations. So he's the perfect coach to deal with that type of conflict because, of course, you don't roll up on your coach and bump him on the sideline and yell at him during the course of a Super Bowl.
But, Chad, I think if you're coaching at that level, you need to be that way because these guys are so geeked up. You watch them coming onto the field, even during the game, they're crazed. They're going to do stuff like that because they're almost out of their minds.
Yes, and I'm sure you, based on what the lip reader came up with, we know how Travis Kelce is. He's a team guy, might be the greatest tight end of all time. He wants to win, and he believes that if you get him the football, he's going to help them accomplish the mission. And they were struggling on offense, so it's like, give me the freaking ball.
He has reason to believe that. You know, they've been pretty successful when they throw it to him.
Hey, Coach, the offense is better when I'm handling the football.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah. So that's just the magic of Andy Reid, who is, quickly climbing the charts of one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's so tremendous, Godfather. His offensive mind, the way he deals with people, his players love him. I'm just impressed with the way he rolls.
I am too, Chad, and I'm happy for him because this is a guy who underwent a lot of criticism in Philadelphia, if you recall.
No question. But look at the success he had there now. You look at what he was able to do with Donovan McNabb, who was not an all-time great like Patrick Mahomes.
And not a practice player, they said. A guy who was pretty difficult to deal with.
Yeah, heck, he was out of shape in the Super Bowl when they lost to the Patriots,
That's right.
vomiting on the sideline.
Yeah.
So he did a heck of a job there. Not good with clock management. That was one of his big bugaboos. But like great coaches do, he continued to work and refine his process and got better. And then he finally got the quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and took it to a different level. But look at the success, whether it's Donovan McNabb or Alex Smith or now Mahomes. Success, success, success. He's made it work with whatever quarterback he's gotten.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
And you have to give him credit, too. They went after that quarterback. It wasn't like he just dropped in his lap. They were very proactive in going after Mahomes when a lot of people, this guy's too raw. He's not ready to play. He can't play. And he was smart.
Yeah.
Kept him down for a year, played him behind Alex Smith, and let him learn a little bit, worked with his fundamentals. Man, oh, man. Nothing but success after that.
All right, let's go out to the phones. Raider Mike, who's down in Vegas, wants to chime in. Raider Mike, what's up, buddy? Your takeaway on the game?
Well, first off, the traversing, psycho, Swifty, army from hell is out of my town now.
Everyone's out.
What? Dude, you could not move here.
That's what I heard. Even the airport, right? It was tied up.
Yeah, you can't move. Is Vegas going to be in the rotation? Oh, yeah. Pretty much think so. Oh, man. And what's going to happen here? This is my National Lampoon thought about this. You're going to start watching Star Raider players that aren't already hooked up going after all these badass chicks. That'll do the Taylor Swift effect. That's how weird this vibe is here now. Too much star power floating here. I mean, that was probably, other than Prince, the best Super Bowl halftime show ever put on.
What do you think about the halftime show, Godfather?
I liked it. I thought Usher's really good. He is good. Right,
Well, he
Mike?
copied Michael Jackson's every move,
Yeah.
but he's a badass.
Yeah.
But the way they did it, not just the center stage, Godfather, it was the whole light, the whole dancing, the whole acrobatic effect, Circus du Soleil.
Roller skating.
Oh, yeah, it was just insane. I'm like, wow, that's the ceiling now. Who's going to break out of that? The Abu Dhabi Camels? You know, I don't know where to go with that. But anyway, this is between me and Chad now. Godfather, you got to step out.
All right.
Muppet King rose again. This maddening process has to end. My defensive line is set up to do that. And word is on the street, we're going to pull Chris Jones. And we are going to put the Muppet King into the dirt.
All right, we've been over this before, Raider Mike. You know how this is going to go down, okay? It's painful for you and I both to admit, but our teams are screwed for the next decade, all right? We don't have Patrick Mahomes. We don't even have a quarterback that's – Patrick Mahomes owns the division. He owns the AFC. He's going to continue to dominate the AFC West. The Raiders and Broncos are done. The Chargers have life because they have a legitimate quarterback and a good coach now. But until further notice, just assume the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the division every year, and they're going to be competing for Super Bowls for the next decade. They're a dynasty now, are they not, Godfather? 3 championships?
No question about it.
They're going for a three-peat now?
Yeah, especially in these days, Chad, where everything is against a team doing what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. All right, we'll come back and try to get inside of a mind of a great offensive mind. How can you be a great offensive mind and just abandon your game plan? We'll talk about that next. You got the Rip City Drive. And what's going on, my friends? Now 4 o'clock. The Chiefs over the Niners in overtime last night, 25-22 to win Super Bowl 58. Back-to-back championships for KC. And the second Super Bowl to reach overtime after the game. The MVP, Patrick Mahomes, shared his thoughts. The Chiefs now going to pursue a three-peat. That's never been done in the Super Bowl era. The Niners are the favorites to win Super Bowl 59 in Vegas. Trailblazers get one more night off. They have two more games before the All-Star break, both against Minnesota, tomorrow night and on Thursday. Tip time tomorrow at 7, a live game day starting at 4:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Ryan Rupert has been assigned to the Rip City Remix. More of the Rip City Drive coming at you right now. Evan Giddings from 95.7 the game at 420. All right, we're going to go to San Francisco here at 420 and talk with Evan Giddings, 95.7 the game, and get his take on how things went down. Brian No, Fox Sports Radio will Super Bowl recap with us at 520. But just for a moment, Dwight and I want to just take this opportunity to say thank you to everyone who was involved in our event on Friday, Chillin' for a Cause, over at Jackson's Food Store right here off Bangy Road, I-5 and 217. The event was a lot of work and a lot of planning, but it came off without a hitch, and it was terrific because we were in the cooler for 3 hours. We had some terrific people stop by, like Alex Brink, the voice of the Trailblazers, Travis Demers, Lance Christian. Many listeners stopped by. We had great involvement from our entire staff here at iHeart, and the event was great. Most importantly, people are bidding and driving up the donation price that's going to go to benefit ALS Northwest. But, you know, it was one of those nights, Godfather, where after the show and after a chance to unwind, I went down and met my former producer down in San Francisco, Cody Elias. Him and his wife were in town for a few days, so I met him down in the Pearl District at Star Pizza, and we were just hanging out, and I was just sitting there reflecting on the day and the event, and I'm always just blown away by listeners and the participation that they take with the show, their encouragement, their willingness to stop by. Dr. Mike and his wife stopped by to say hi and encourage us. But those things mean a lot to me. You know, the way that people step up and show up and help to participate. They bid on prizes. They do things that reminds you of, you know, how powerful radio is, but also the community, man. It makes me happy. So I'm glad we were a part of that, and I'm thankful for all the listeners who were a part of it, and Michael Shacker, who spent more time in the cooler freezing his butt off than anybody else. Like, it takes an entire team to pull something like that off.
You know, Chad, all the way home, and it's about a half-hour drive, really, all the way home I was thinking, yeah, I got cold, but that was great. That was a great show and a lot of fun because of the people who helped us, the people at Jackson's. Our staff here was terrific. Everything was done. I mean, we had the easy part. We showed up and did our little dog and pony show and had a lot of fun. And there's Mike Shacker in that cooler the whole time pretty much, sweating the equipment, hoping that nothing freezes while we're doing the show. It was just, it was great. It's such a great cause, and I'm loving how the auction is going. And if you haven't gone to that page yet, you should. Chance to play golf with Chad and I. A chance to be with Chad as a Blazer reporter. All kinds of good things on there. Some autographs, jerseys, basketball, even a great concert opportunity that for 4 people, I think.
That's right, up at RVN Style Resorts Amphitheater, where you can bid, you get to pick the show, you get to stay in the suite area, and you've got a server to take care of you. We've dropped a couple of the prices down in a couple of the big events, so you can go check it out. Go to our website, ripcityradio.com. Auction's going to continue on throughout the rest of the week. And if you go to our contest and promotions page, you'll see Chillin' for a Cause. Click on that. You'll find the link for the auction and continue to bid on the items because it's all proceeds benefit ALS Northwest. But what a terrific event that was. It was awesome. So thank you. We thank you because without you, it wouldn't be possible. All right, Mike, Kyle Shanahan, we talked about it at length, Godfather, where they had to run the football. They had to stay committed to the run because if you're going up against that defense, their weakness, if they had one, was their rush defense. You want to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline as much as possible because he's a dangerous quarterback. But most importantly, you want to put your offense and your quarterback, your young QB, in a position to have success. And I thought the opening drive, as you mentioned, they had Purdy some makeable passes that he was able to develop some confidence with. They ran the football. They mixed it up really well. They unfortunately had the fumble, but in the first half, they were controlling the game, and they were running the football. And then all of a sudden, the second half kicks off. They're up by 7, and they decide, forget the run. We're going to go with 9 plays, 8 of them passes. And it produced nothing. And I'm just like, what in the world's going on here? And I'm thinking, Kyle is a smart coach. He's a great offensive mind. He knows better than this.
How do you justify that, really? I don't understand how you...
Well, you don't.
Yeah, I guess not.
You don't, because it didn't work. They would have had better success. Their best player, their best football player on the offense is Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
He was the best running back in the league. He's their most dynamic player. He can do it so many different ways. He just impacts the game, and you went away from him. And I don't understand that at all. You got to stick with the run. But as you pointed out, is it ego, or do some of these great offensive minds just get bored with the game plan? Seriously.
I think it's boredom and impatience. They want to see results quicker. He knows he knew at that point that we should be ahead by more points than we are from the way we dominated in the first half. So let's go get us some points, like right now, And I think it's really unfortunate that they just didn't stick with what they were doing at the very start of the game, which is a great mix of play action passes and a good, solid power running game.
Yeah, that was really inexcusable. I don't get it. I don't understand. You get away from what you do best. They're a running football game. Everything else is set up off of the run. And once they got away from that, it played into Kansas City's hands.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden you don't get the yardage you need on first and second down, and you put Purdy in third and long. And as a result, the 49ers ended the game 3 of 12 on third down.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not a good enough percentage. You've got to be able to be better in those spots. And I don't get it. It almost looked like he was calling the game to say, almost like he wanted to show us that Brock Purdy is a legit quarterback, and I'm going to help him win the MVP.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to overthink it. Just run the football and be patient.
Well, he's not going to win the MVP that way either, and Kyle should know that by now. He's not a guy you're just going to drop him back in the pocket 5 or 6 times in a row and expect him to hit guys downfield. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Well, especially against that defense.
Yeah.
Crazy. So that was bizarre. George Kittle, I don't know where he was, but he didn't have much of an impact on the game. Kansas City limited McCaffrey and did a great job on him. And then with the other players, like Debo was in and out of the lineup, which is a problem. They need him to be successful. And Ayuk didn't have a major impact.
Yeah.
So it was really bizarre to see how that played out. But I thought that hurt them because when they had their opportunities to add to their lead, especially on that first possession after they picked off Mahomes, they got out of their sequencing in terms of what they wanted to do or what the game plan was, and it cost them. Because when you don't capitalize, when they give you a short field or you get a chance to get up on Mahomes, you have to do it. Because if you don't, you know at some point in the game, we all know it was going to come. That run's coming. They're going to make plays and get in the end zone. So you've got to capitalize when you have those short fields.
Yeah. that 2-score lead in the second half is such an advantage, and it does put a lot of pressure on the other team's offense. You've got to get to that. And they had opportunities to do that, and they just couldn't pull it off. And not even mount any sort of drive is really disappointing, I think, to their team. I mean, that breeds a real mental slump with your players who know that you're going to need more points. You can't stick there. Those points aren't going to win the game. You got to get more.
Well, you were right about the defense. You thought after a couple of weeks off, after the poor performances we had seen down the stretch, and especially in the playoffs against Green Bay and Detroit, that they would play better.
Yeah.
What's sad about this loss for the 49ers, their defense played the type of game they needed to play to win the game.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan, who is the offensive genius, his offense couldn't do enough of their part to be able to win that game. It's just so simple against Mahomes. If you settle for field goals and you don't capitalize on short fields, he's going to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
It just requires so much to take care of Kansas City.
Well, and you don't want him having the ball last.
No.
You know, that's not something you want. No, you will have to have the ball at the end of the game.
When they did not convert that 3rd down and 4 just under the 2-minute warning and were forced to kick the field goal, I had no doubt in my mind that Kansas City would at least even the game. And they nearly got in the end zone, for crying out loud.
Well, they could have. They just ran out of time. I mean, or they would have. We've seen that movie enough to know what he's going to do in that situation against multiple teams. We've seen it so many times.
He was good. I thought Kansas City, they did a good job of running the clock to make sure the 49ers did not have another opportunity, but maybe they ran a little bit too much time off, and it didn't give them a chance to attack with another play there at the end.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't run a play with 6 seconds left with Mahomes on the field. Any other quarterback, I'm like, no, we're going to kick the field goal. But with Mahomes, it's like, here, just throw something quick and see if we can score and win it now.
No, he can handle that situation. No question. 3 or 4 seconds, he would unload the ball one way or the other, either for a touchdown or an incomplete.
Man, it's crazy. You know, Kyle Shanahan, for being an aggressive coach, or at least that's how he's known, he has proven over the last 3 games that he has a tendency to get a little bit conservative in different spots.
Yeah. It's not conservative when you throw the ball that many times at that point of the game. If you're a conservative guy, run the ball. You know, you work really hard at trying to establish whatever you had going on that first drive. You know, run the ball.
Yeah, mix it up. Keep the defense guessing. You be able to put yourself in a position to use the play action and put your young quarterback in a position to have success.
Yeah, guy's 24 years old in his 2nd year in the league. You know, you got to help him a little bit.
After the game, Purdy talked about the missed opportunities. Yeah, it's just weird. I guess for Shanahan, if I look at the 3 playoff games combined, they were struggling for a large portion of the Green Bay game, got off to a poor start against Detroit for the first half, and had long stretches last night that were ineffective. Shanahan's got to be better.
Well, and like you said, right to open the show, they dominated the first half, and it didn't show on the scoreboard.
I can't believe there were 7 field goals kicked last night. Like you said, a scoreless first quarter with the Niners and Chiefs. Are you kidding me?
That's crazy.
The giveaways that we had at Spirit Mountain last night were based on when a team scores, right?
Oh, really?
And we pulled tickets for a drum. Because of the lack of scoring, the fourth quarter hit, and we had to do like a liquidation of all the prizes. And so it was total madness. And people were getting mad because they had to jump in between plays to get on the mic. It was a mess. All because those offenses couldn't put more points on the board. It made our life tough. I couldn't believe it. Normally, Super Bowls are high scoring. And you would think with the 49ers, who came in with a great offense this year, and of course, Patrick Mahomes would be more, but a scoreless first quarter, it's like, what? 10-3 at halftime? I didn't expect that.
2 highly scripted teams that usually have a great first drive.
Boy, the Chiefs, for most of the first half, were just god-awful on offense.
They were.
Mahomes was getting pressure up in his grill. They couldn't make plays. They couldn't sustain drives. And when they had an opportunity to score, they turned it over. Gosh, I couldn't believe that Pacheco fumble. That was bad.
Yeah, it was.
All right, when we come back, we're going to go to San Francisco and talk with Evan Giddings. We'll ask him, do you agree with Shanahan's decision to take the ball in overtime? All right, he was so awesome last week that we had to ask him back on to recap what went down last night in that overtime thriller with the Chiefs and 49ers with 95.7 the game. He's on X at eGiddings10. Evan Giddings is back on the Rip City Drive. Evan, it's great to have you back on the show. I want to ask you this. Were you aware of all of the overtime rule changes in the playoffs before overtime kicked off last night?
First of all, glad to be back. And as much as I was aware of course, coming on with you guys at around this time, I was not aware going into that game of all the kind of bells and whistles that were apparently a part of the new overtime. I was busy, and I was rushing to look them all up as we headed into overtime to make sure that I was briefed.
Yeah.
Where it sounds like the 49ers were kind of in the same place because even a Harvard graduate and Kyle Juszczyk didn't know the rules.
Evan, I'm curious. What do you think, looking back on it? Would you have taken the ball first, or would you have had them take it first?
So at first, and again, this was my misunderstanding of the rules, that I would have kicked the ball. And I think that's what Andy Reid said as well. But hearing Kyle Shanahan's explanation, along with speaking to a couple of my friends that work in analytics, I actually think that the correct decision was to get the ball first, because I think the opportunity to present, if you do go down and score or prevent the Chiefs from getting a touchdown, as unlikely as that sounds, you set yourself up for the true sudden death in overtime, which is the way that it used to be. And, of course, you want the ball in that situation. So I think as more information and more data comes out, we'll see. It was kind of a 6-to-1, half dozen to the other. And like many things in these types of games, as you both understand, to the winner goes the spoils. Whoever wins gets to write the script, and whoever loses, unfortunately, is the best supporting actor within this movie. So I thought it was a great film. I thought it was a fantastic Super Bowl, and unfortunately, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, in that particular instance, were on the wrong side of that coin flip or decision, however you want to call it.
Hey, Evan, do you think Kyle Shanahan was fully aware of the rule changes? And the reason why I'm asking the question is only because I was surprised at the number of his players that had no idea what was going on.
I think he was, but clearly that didn't make his way down to both sides of the football. Like, it wasn't just the offense. It also was guys on defense as well. So I think that Kyle Shanahan was, but I don't think that there was obviously enough emphasis on it when they didn't understand the rules, especially if you're the defense and you're kind of expecting the Kansas City Chiefs, it seems like, to just either take a timeout in that spot. I don't think that they're necessarily ready for that last play, even though it was another beautiful play designed by Andy Reid, pulled the same string that he did last year in the Super Bowl out to Mecole Hardman. But I do think that there wasn't enough emphasis on what the hell was actually happening in the moment, because I don't think the Niners in that particular play with 3 seconds right before the end of the first overtime were thinking, oh, well, this is just going to roll over like it's a second quarter. Like, they assumed that the Chiefs I guess we're trying to run out the clock or take – I don't know what they were thinking, but they didn't have enough, I think, messaging from the coaching staff.
Evan, did you get any explanation from Shanahan on the way they opened the second half? First 9 plays, 8 passes, which didn't seem to fit the way they are or their personality. What was the story on that?
Well, the explanation was – and I think this is more what people have an issue with Kyle Shanahan. The explanation wasn't really an explanation. It was, trust me, I'm Kyle Shanahan, and the plays didn't work because the plays didn't work. Like, there was no, well, we're trying to test this, or, like, in my opinion, the reason why I wouldn't have an issue with those 2 3-and-outs and McCaffrey not touching the ball on the ground out of the half would be because, well, what's the biggest difference in your team between the last Super Bowl you lost to the Chiefs and this Super Bowl? In my opinion, it's the quarterback. So let's try and test this Chiefs team defensively with the guy that's got us here, with the top 5 MVP candidate, with the most efficient passer in the league. Now, if you want to critique some of the play calls out of the half, I understand, but that to me is the kind of reasoning or explanation that I would love to hear from Shanahan, as opposed to, well, we ran the plays and it didn't work, and then we got to the ground and we got stuffed, and I guess we're just trying to kind of feel it out. Like, Shanahan seems to turtle up both in-game as well as particularly at the podium, and I don't think that helps his case when people are wondering who to place the blame at a certain person's feet. Unfortunately, it feels like it is him.
We're talking with Evan Giddings, 95.7 the game in San Francisco. What is the biggest criticism of Kyle Shanahan down in San Francisco in general?
So it would be in-game play calling. I think that's the biggest thing, because you can't really critique the win-loss record in the regular season. And he's now been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years, 4 NFC Championship games. He's gotten everything except the big one, right? But I would offer the person and the team on the other side kind of being the reason that he hasn't, which is he's trying to interrupt the dynasty. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do. It's weird because today, as we were taking calls for 4 hours, a lot of the criticism certainly was on Shanahan, and understandably frustrated with the head coach in that particular 2 or 3 possession span that you mentioned, Dwight. But to me, this is a Super Bowl that if it was Kyle Shanahan's first, I don't know if we would be critiquing him the same way than if it was his second as head coach and third if you include his coordinating. But because there's been a little bit of a track record, number one, of losing, but number two, of the second guessing of in-game play calling, we're going to just immediately jump to, well, he should have done this, he hasn't changed, he hasn't matured, hasn't evolved, and that's the kind of road that we were led down today, when in fact, I think this was Kyle Shanahan's probably best game in terms of getting aggressive. The fact that he went for it on fourth down and 3 down the stretch of that game, down by 3 points, I thought was not what Kyle Shanahan was going to do and not who Kyle Shanahan has been, and it turned into a touchdown to take the lead. If an extra point is made, maybe we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers as Super Bowl champs. Who knows? But I felt like because of everything that had led up to Kyle Shanahan's second Super Bowl loss, we're looking at what he didn't do with a microscope, and we're nitpicking as opposed to saying in a singular fashion, I think in this game, that was probably the best job that he's done.
Great point. I'm wondering what you thought of Purdy's performance overall.
I thought it was bland, and I thought it was fine. But fine is not typically a quarterback performance, especially in the modern game. That's going to get you over the top in a Super Bowl, and certainly a fine performance is not one that's going to help you beat arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, or a guy who's on track to become potentially the greatest quarterback of all time. I thought that Brock Purdy was a guy that was playing not to lose, and that's understandable. Again, for someone that's in his second season, first year as starter, 24 years old, 255 and a touchdown without a turnover is not a bad place to be. But when you're talking about knocking off an all-time team, an all-time quarterback, I'm sorry, fine is not going to cut it. And so I'm not pointing the finger at Brock Purdy and saying he's the reason why they lost this game. He's certainly not. But I do think that he's a part of it. If you look at all the dynamic playmakers they have on offense, and I think that was the key for the Niners to win this game, was through their offense. You look at Purdy, you look at Debo, you look at Kittle, and you look at Ayuk. None of those players, McCaffrey's the only one that you could say, elevated their game in the biggest of moments. And that would be my criticism of Brock Purdy, is that he didn't elevate his play in the biggest game. And whether that's too much to expect from a guy in this position is up to you. But I thought he was fine, and fine is not good enough.
Hey, Evan, what's your takeaway on Mahomes coming off another Super Bowl championship?
Man, so I was trying to wrap my mind around this last night. Like, what this guy is doing, he is right now on a track to become potentially, like, one of the greatest athletes ever. Like, forget football, forget quarterbacks. Like, this guy, it feels like an inevitable type of outcome whenever he steps onto the field in the biggest of moments. It's like, basically, in the early 2000s and late 1990s, it wasn't whether Tiger Woods was going to win. It was pretty much who's coming in second. When Roger Federer was at his peak, it was Rafa Nadal on clay in the French Open. It's who's playing for second. Right now, Novak Djokovic. Some of the best athletes in the world, when you watch them play, it's not a matter of if, it is when. And that was the type of feeling that I was left walking away with last night in regards to Patrick Mahomes. Yes, he has 3 out of 4 in his first 6 seasons. I think Troy Aikman is the only other quarterback to have as many before his 30th birthday, as well as Tom Brady. If Patrick Mahomes can win another one in the next year, number one, that'd be a three-peat. It'd be obviously incredible. No other quarterback would have 4 Super Bowls before the age of 30. So we're not talking about him as being one of the greatest quarterbacks ever at that point. We might be talking about him being one of the greatest athletes ever. And that's where my mind went, because I was just pretty much taken aback by everything I saw.
Okay, Evan, off-season coming up now. What are the big off-season questions for the 49ers?
Well, unfortunately, it feels like the offseason questions are kind of the same questions that they had at the end of last year. It's, I was thinking about this as well last night. Like, you can make a case that the San Francisco 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, and no matter what quarterback, they're Sisyphus. Like, they've been pushing that rock up the hill now for about 4 years, and it feels like once they get near the top, they just go right back down to the bottom. And so it isn't so much about the off-season decisions that they have to make. To me, it's going to be about how you can, basically take the 15-round body blows that a great boxer does and get back up off the canvas, whether it's by knockout or by split decision. When you fall in a fight that comes down to the wire, how do you respond if you're a fighter 6 months later, or if you're the San Francisco 49ers in 8 months come week 1 of the 2024 season? How do you get back up after taking arguably the toughest defeat in recent memory? That is a very, very difficult thing to do, and a lot of people are going to be looking in a lot of mirrors at themselves this offseason, wondering what they could have done, and then, of course, how they're going to allow that not to happen again. I don't have the answers, but I don't think as far as a roster construction perspective, they have a whole lot to do. It's just about playing a little bit better in the bigger moment, and that's hard.
One little question in regard to offseason stuff that I'm curious about after watching them the last couple of years with so many key players getting injured here and there. And I'm wondering, the biggest topic now in sports medicine is injury prevention. Has there been any thought about examining the kind of injury prevention measures that the 49ers take? Because it seems to me that it's critical they keep their key guys a little healthier than they've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think for most of the season and even into the postseason, they were pretty healthy. Now, I know McCaffrey had some calf stuff down the stretch. Trent Williams missed a couple of games earlier this year, Deebo Samuel, and then, of course, the injuries that they sustained in the Super Bowl. But that was kind of, at least from Dre Greenlaw's perspective, a lingering Achilles injury. He had tendonitis. That's not something I guess you can necessarily solve.
Yeah.
But for the 49ers to be as healthy as they were throughout the regular season, I thought was extremely impressive. And then, of course, they ended up breaking down after having 2 weeks to rest. So I don't know. Maybe some people are pointing to the soggy practice field and the less than ideal conditions in Las Vegas. I just think they broke down against a very physical football team in Kansas City, and you saw that first half. Even though it was 10-3, those guys were hitting with ferocity and a viciousness that I thought made the second half all that much more impressive. So, as much as we'd like to look at how to keep guys healthy, at the end of the day, it's the NFL, and I think the Niners did the best they could throughout the year to keep their guys in a position to play in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it through all 60 minutes.
Evan Giddings with 95.7 The Game. You can follow him on X at eGiddings10. Dude, you're the man, man. Thank you so much. Keep blowing up. I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk again in the future, buddy.
I appreciate it. Anytime, guys. Thank you so much.
There you go. Evan Giddings, killing it. You know, there is something to be said about that. It reminds me of the early days in the NBA when I started watching in the 80s. There were some great teams, the Milwaukee Bucks being one of them, that couldn't get over the hump because you had the all-time greats with the Celtics on top in the East and the Lakers on top in the West.
Yeah.
It's hard to get past those teams. But I think he summed it up perfectly in terms of how I view Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is fine. He's a great young guy. He's playing terrific football. But on that stage, good's not going to be good enough against Patrick Mahomes. Can he be great on that stage?
Yeah, my only thought is 24 years old, second year in the league, didn't become a real regular full-time starter until this season. First Super Bowl he's ever played in. All those things factor in, and you got to hope that he will progress. And while progressing, he retains that efficiency that he's been operating with, all season long.
The other issue for the 49ers, and this goes back to there are no guarantees in sports, but they're an aging roster. They got a lot of guys who are key players who are older, and in the NFL, that can be a quick drop-off. And injuries can be a part of that. Part of the reason with the injury issues, too, is their age. But it's going to be tough for them to get back for that reason.
Well, injuries to running backs, too. It's hard to keep those guys healthy. They take more hits than anybody else takes, really. And I look at a guy like McCaffrey. How much longer are they going to be able to keep him with that kind of speed and power? You know, a major injury, yeah, he'd be able to come back from a knee injury or something, but would he be the same player?
And then it's just such an advantage when you've got one of those elite quarterbacks. Like, look at the Chiefs this year. This was the year they were supposed to be taken out. Young receiving core, offense is a miss. They struggled throughout the course of the season. And then they get to the postseason, and they turn it all around, and they get the job done. This was the year to take them out.
It was, yeah.
Kyle Shanahan may never get a better look than the one he had last night.
Mm-hmm.
For the Chiefs, we just look at them and say, they're just going to tinker a little bit, and they'll be right back in the mix.
Well, he's right, too. I mean, you look at him and you say, who's playing for second place? I mean, the only thing that could get him is the injury bugaboo. You know, if Mahomes goes down, okay, they're ordinary then.
Yeah, of course. Like any team with a great quarterback, they would be ordinary. But if he's on the field, they're in a position to compete at all times.
Yeah, and one of the things about him, and I'd knock on wood for his sake, is that he's been so healthy and able to play even through the injuries he's had. But we saw last year how many different starting quarterbacks went through the league. And, man, there were a lot of quarterback injuries last season or this last season, even though quarterbacks are better protected than they've ever been.
Yeah, Mahomes he took some big hits last night.
Mm-hmm.
He got hit hard.
You can't get him out of the game, though. He's amazing. Look at last year when he's playing with that ankle that looked like it was going to keep him out.
And just like last year, it was the big run late that set them up in a position to win the game last night. Big run late that put them in a position to get the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
It sounds like the 49ers were confused as to what was going on at the end of the overtime period.
Mm-hmm. That shouldn't happen.
Even if Shanahan was aware but didn't communicate it clearly to his team, that's on the coach.
Yeah.
Either he didn't know, which is on the coach, or he knew but didn't communicate it clearly with his players. That's on the coach.
That has to be part of your pregame. You know, you can't tell them on the sideline right before overtime. That's got to be, guys, here's the overtime situation. Just tell them that.
And then the fat man, Andy Reid, is just sitting there preseason getting his team ready. Hey, when we reach the Super Bowl, if we get to overtime, here are the rules and here's our plan.
Yep. The wise walrus is always prepared.
All right, we'll come back and focus in on Patrick Mahomes and his greatness. You got the Rip City Drive. What was it Andy Reid said last night? How about the D? Let's take a listen to that. I love Andy Reid. How about that D, baby? That's Andy Reid quickly climbing the charts on the all-time list. And it settled for me last night, Godfather. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. I knew that going in, but there's no question in my mind. He's the best I've ever seen. I don't care about the ring total. It's very simple for me. Bill Russell's got more championship rings than anyone who ever played in the NBA. None of us consider him the greatest basketball player of all time. And that's not to take anything away from what he accomplished. He was terrific. But he's not the best. Tom Brady's got more rings than Patrick Mahomes. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes all day.
Yeah, I would too.
John Elway is my forever love, and I now can admit that Patrick Mahomes is John Elway. He's just a little bit better.
Well, yeah, and John Elway's close, though, when you consider the athletic ability that Elway had, which this is the first guy to come along that I thought might be as good an athlete as Elway.
That baseball connection is unique in what it does for quarterbacks, but it's the leadership that he provides. You can tell his teammates love him. He's very accurate with the football. He's got a unique timing on knowing when to take off and run. He knows how to get the football into tight windows. There's just nothing he can't do on a football field. I am literally blown away by Patrick Mahomes, and I have been ever since I saw him live the very first time. He is sensational. And I thought last night, when they needed it most, and he struggled for most of the game, 8 for 8 down the stretch. Just boom, 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 boom. And he ended up making the big plays with his legs when his team needed it. It's amazing. They outrushed the 49ers last night. I didn't think that was going to happen. A lot of that was due to Patrick Mahomes' big runs late in the game.
Well, his ability to pick up first downs and yardage with the run is something that Tom Brady can never match that.
No.
He never will be able to.
No, Tom Brady, like Peyton Manning, couldn't run, but had a unique ability to slide and move in the pocket and buy time and deliver the football on target every single time, which is amazing to me. But Patrick Mahomes is just, he's sensational, and it wouldn't surprise me if they go out there and win a three-peat. It's never happened before, but this team with that quarterback's got a great chance to do it. I admire the way he plays. I hate the Chiefs, but I love Mahomes. And he's one of those few athletes that I will go out of my way to watch because he's so great at what he does.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. You know, it's like, and you've talked about this before, and Steve Young always talks about it. Today's game requires a mobile quarterback. It just does. They're the ones that are winning, and the old ones weren't like that, Chad. I go way back to Johnny Unitas, who was my favorite quarterback as a kid, but he couldn't run as well as Tom Brady did. Those guys were big, tall guys, strong, pretty good arms, but they were told to stay in the pocket. You didn't leave the pocket.
That's right. And the whole idea behind that is that the defenses are so good and the defensive coordinators are so good and they're dialing up the pressure that there's going to be situations on third down late in the game when the play that you call is just not going to be there. And so the quarterback has got to be able to pick up something and be able to maneuver and pick up yards with their legs. And that's why Mahomes is so dangerous, because it was his running late in the game that really turned the tide.
Not only when passing plays failed, but you can call running plays for him like they do for Lamar Jackson. Now, you don't want to run him too much, but when you really need that first down late in the game, man, his wheels are there. He can pick that up.
Yeah, he's deadly. He's the best. He's tremendous, and he's going to win more. And like Evan pointed out, if he wins the title next year and gets a three-peat, he'll be to 4 before the age of 30, which is amazing. And he's going to be around for another 10 years plus, barring some type of catastrophic injury, so he's not going anywhere. I think the scary part for me is that he's only going to get better, because that whole mental processing in terms of understanding his offense better than anyone, knowing what the defense is going to do in the game, continuing to slow down, it gets to a point where you can't defend him, because if you blitz him, he's going to kill you. Zone defense is a joke. He will be prepared for every situation.
Yeah, and even Orlowski said today that he had a lot of checks at the line of scrimmage in that game last night. That's hard to tell unless you're close to the field or you can hear it and all that. But he's already pretty smart.
Meaning the play is called, he gets up to the lines like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
He checks out of it and makes sure the other 10 guys know exactly what's going on.
Well, I would say in 2 or 3 years, he's going to be a chess master. You know, he's going to be that guy that can get up there and get you in the right. He'll get you in the right play almost every time.
Yeah, the ultimate maestro. And if I'm Andy Reid, why retire? Why would you want to shut this down when you can keep coaching with that guy?
No, that ride's pretty good right now. Yeah.
It's easy.
A lot of cheeseburgers after the Super Bowl.
Oh, my goodness. It's got to be great for Andy Reid because he can just continue to draw up plays. There are no limitations to what you can do on offense with a quarterback like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Amazing. No doubt in our mind. We all knew that they were going to score. At the end of the game to tie, they were going to score. And then in overtime, it's like, oh, we're down by 3. Let's go win the game.
Kyle Shanahan's the only guy that didn't know they were going to score.
Oh, my goodness. It's got to be frustrating when you get in a game like that and you're like, we have to stop that guy.
Mm.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's at that point where you say, gosh, those chances we had to build on our lead, so we had a little bit of a cushion. You've got to have a cushion going into the last 5 minutes of a game against him because you know he's going to go get one real quick. You got to make him get 2 scores.
All right. One quick note. Malcolm Brogdon had treatment for the tendinitis that he's dealing with. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So the Blazers, once again, going to be shorthanded at guard again tomorrow night with the Timberwolves in town for 2. All right, we'll come back and we'll focus in on that overtime situation. We'd love your take on that. What do you think about his decision to take the ball first and try to set himself up in a position where he could have the ball on the 3rd possession in sudden death? I'm talking about the 49ers. You got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. This just in. Super Bowl overtime generated an estimated $60 million in additional ad revenue for CBS. The total ad revenue for the game, $695 million, Godfather. That is off the charts. News for your Portland Trailblazers. Malcolm Brogdon had treatment for the tendonitis he's been dealing with. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. The Blazers get one more night off. They have two more games before the All-Star break, both against Minnesota. Tomorrow night and Thursday. Tip-off will be at 7. Game day will start at 4:30. We have 2 pairs of tickets to give away for Thursday's game against Minnesota. We'll do that tomorrow. Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday here on the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. The Chiefs get the win over the Niners in Super Bowl 58, 25-22. It's back-to-back titles. They're now going to go for three-peat, which has never been done in the Super Bowl era. We'll talk with Brian O at 5:20. Well, I got to give Chris Burkhardt credit. We have a lot of 49er fans on staff here. Shacker's a huge 49er fan, as is Chris Burkhardt. But Burkhardt's one of the few guys I know. His team can lose a big game. He gets irritated for a couple of moments, and then he lets it go and doesn't let it bother him. I talked to him about 30 minutes after the game last night.
Did you really?
He'd already shaken it, yeah.
You were taking a chance calling him 30 minutes after that game.
No, I knew. Because we've had the talk before, he's the only guy I would ever call after a big loss with one of his teams because he shakes it. And he's like, yeah, it totally sucked. But he goes, I shook it, and I move on. He doesn't let it bother him.
Takes you a little longer than that, doesn't it?
I get really ticked off. There were games that just destroyed me. What became a lot easier for me is once Elway got one, I was like, okay, my life's complete. I don't have to worry about anything, and it got a lot easier. But before that, yeah, that loss to Jacksonville when they were the #1 seed, it crushed me. I was a younger Chad at that point, and I was convinced at that point in my life that Elway was never going to win a Super Bowl. I was like, this is really going to suck. Fortunately, he won back-to-back and retired, and then he showed up last night and was holding Lombardi again. It was a great dream.
I thought that would really upset you to see him carrying that trophy up there for the Chiefs.
No, I love him so much. I was like, whoa, he's there. I had no idea he was hanging out. I was just glad, as my friends pointed out, that he was not hammered. I thought he might have been having little Super Bowl silver bullets, but that apparently wasn't the case. So pretty cool to see him there. But, overall, Godfather, I thought a very enjoyable game. Great game.
Yeah.
A great halftime show. And it was a great finish. I thought fourth quarter and overtime were very riveting for a big game of that nature. And you pointed this out earlier. I grew up in an era where the NFC dominated the AFC for years. And they weren't close games. They were all blowouts, except for the Giants-Bills game, the 20-19 finish on wide right. Outside of that, they were all hideous. One other good game in there. The Bengals and the 49ers on that last-minute drive by Montana. But outside of that, horrible games. But we're in this stretch now where we're getting great Super Bowls, and last night was no different. Terrific game, great finish, and we all learned something about overtime, too. I had no idea. But now I have a pretty good handle on the overtime rules for playoff games now.
Yeah.
I'm glad they changed it.
Yeah.
Both teams should have the right to possess the football in a game of that nature.
Yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be decided with a coin toss. That's really what it was before. I was going to say, too, I thought good halftime show. Commercials aren't what they used to be.
Yeah.
But I did like the Dunkin' Donuts commercial that everybody thinks is the best one. I thought it was pretty good.
That was a good one. Yeah, the commercials, I mean, they've done so many different things in ads now. It's hard to top what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the overall broadcast. I thought Tony Romo, he drives me insane.
Oh, yeah.
He's entertaining, but he's crazy. And I'm not sure if he does drugs before a broadcast or what the deal is. But they appeared to have his medication under control because he wasn't quite as bad. The final call, he was blabbering on for quite some time, walking over Jim Nance like usual, but he was okay.
Like
crazy.
Said, Nance apparently loves him, huh?
I think that there's a bromance there that's stronger than you could possibly imagine.
Has to be to put up with him, Because all those guys, and you can talk, and I know a lot of these guys. Kevin Harlan is a guy that I've known for years. Don't step on what he's doing after the game, right? Immediately when he's calling it over, don't step on that. That's the part they know is going to get frozen in time somewhere. Somebody's going to always be playing that back because it's the conclusion of a Super Bowl. Don't step on that. That's immediately what Tony Romo does.
Immediately.
Yeah, he just jumps in with stuff you didn't even need to hear. I mean, come on.
Absolute nonsense. Well, the other big story, of course, was a decision by Kyle Shanahan in overtime to take the ball first. Now, I was under the assumption at the time that overtime started that the rules applied that we had seen in the past. If you score a touchdown, you win the game. So I'm like, yeah, you're going to obviously take the ball. I had no idea about the rule changes, so I'm watching the 49ers drive down. I'm like, oh, my goodness, they're going to score a touchdown and win the game, especially after that horrendous holding penalty on the Chiefs, which extended the drive. So I was unaware of what was going on there. So I thought Kyle Shanahan, when he made the decision to take the ball, was like, that's a no-brainer. But it turns out that that's not the case because both teams would have a chance to possess. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear the broadcast. Did they do a good job of explaining it on the broadcast so you knew what was going on or not? Because Romo was crazy.
They kind of explained. They didn't explain it. Yeah, I guess they did explain it at the start. They did. They had a graphic, which really helped too. Because if you're at a Super Bowl party, you can't really hear the broadcasters. I wasn't at a party, but I know everyone was. But they showed it on the graphic. And that's the big reason when the 49ers chose to take the ball right away, it was like, And I hadn't thought it through yet because I was still kind of digesting all the new rules. And I thought, wait a minute. It's kind of like the college thing now where you should take the ball second rather than first.
Here's Kyle Shanahan on the decision to take the ball in overtime.
For overtime, what goes into the decision to take the ball first?
That's just something we talked about with, none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we thought it was in our hands after that.
What do you think about the logic there?
Well, I think if you looked at the percentages and all that, the people in analytics department of his organization would say, yeah, he did the right thing. I would look past that and say, wait a second, we're playing Patrick Mahomes. And quite frankly, he's going to beat us if he has the ball last. And I just wouldn't do it. I'd want to know what Mahomes did, and I would count on him scoring a touchdown, quite frankly. I know you want to have confidence in your defense. It just wasn't going to happen for him. Mahomes is too good.
Well, and what we understand with the Chiefs, they had a plan in place, right?
Yeah.
So if the 49ers would have scored a touchdown, the Chiefs had already planned on going for two because they weren't going to give the ball back to the 49ers with the chance to win the game.
That's exactly right. They weren't going to give them the opportunity that Shanahan had planned to have if it came to that.
And that makes sense in that spot. If I'm Andy Reid, if you're down by 7 and you score a touchdown and you can tie the game and extend it, or have your best player in Mahomes on the field and go for 2, I like my chances with Mahomes going for 2.
Yeah. Rather than giving them the ball back and something crazy happens and
it's
they
very
score.
difficult to keep a good offense out of field goal range nowadays in the NFL.
You sure? With as long as they're kicking now, when you're talking about 60-yard field goals, 55-yard field goals, it's the penetration downfield doesn't have to be nearly as deep as it used to be.
I mean, if I had to point the finger at one person for the majority of blame for that loss, I would probably say it was the coach, Kyle Shanahan. The decision-making in overtime, the fact that his team didn't realize what was going on with the overtime rules, that's not a good look. And the play calling in the second half. And look, I'm not here to criticize the design of the plays. I'm talking about choosing to pass instead of getting McCaffrey involved in those situations.
Yeah.
I thought that was problematic. You got away from the game plan. You got away from what you needed to do to win that game.
Well, and Evan mentioned, and I've seen this online from other people, he acted as if he wanted Purdy to be the MVP of the game.
Yeah.
If that's true, that's unconscionable. You can't coach a game that way.
Yeah, almost like you're like, hey, I told you this guy was good, and we're going to prove it right now.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, that's a real, real bad way to work.
My guess is Purdy would have been happy with the championship, as would have Kyle or any of the fans, regardless of what his stat line was. He could have thrown for $115, win the game, and he wouldn't have cared.
Well, that's why it's hard for me to believe that Shanahan would actually have been thinking that way. That's a very hazardous way to do business.
But it is pretty crazy that his players weren't really sure about the overtime rules. That's insane.
Yeah. That's mismanagement of the high degree.
All right, let me just give you an example of how a call should sound in a big moment and an example of how it should not sound in a big moment. This, of course, is the great Vince Scully. All right, there's the great Vince Scully.
That's how it's done.
That was a minute of downtime to let the play breathe and the crowd to roar. Vin didn't say a word, and neither did his broadcast partner.
Then he comes back with the perfect summation of what just happened.
Perfect.
In very few words.
Here would be an example of what you don't want in a big moment.
Didn't even make a lot of sense, really. and you know what? The thing he could have said was, same play they used to win last year, you know? But he jumped in way too soon.
Oh,
Jim Nantz is trying to just let the fans carry it.
he couldn't help himself.
Oh, he should have choked him out. Nantz should have just grabbed hold of him and put him in a sleeper hole.
Yeah, that was bad.
It was comical.
I'd rather hear Mike Parker in a big moment like that.
Anytime.
Give me Mike Parker all day. Oh, my. Oh, my. All right, Brian No, Fox Sports Radio is coming up next. We'll do a recap with him here on the Rip City Drive. All right, before we get to Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, we have a pair of tickets for the A Brew Fest, which is coming up this weekend, the beer tasting event of the year. You'll indulge your senses with hundreds of beers, seltzers, ciders, and spirits while celebrating the Pacific Northwest with delicious food, celebrity chef demos, live entertainment, and much more. So if you'd like a pair of tickets for the A Brew Fest coming up this weekend, call now. We'll take the first caller, 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. Call now, and you'll get a pair of tickets for the A Brew Fest, 503-248-0620. First caller through gets a pair of tickets. A Brew Fest. Fire away with your calls right now. All right, Fox Sports Radio, Brian Noe, our main man, is back to talk Super Bowl. What's up, B-No?
What's going on, Chad Doing? How is everything? What a lovely day it is with Purdy not winning a ring, huh? Was that lovely or what?
It was spectacular. Dwight and I were curious. Were you aware before overtime began of all the different rule changes as they prepared for overtime last night?
Well, yes, basically. But the one I didn't know was when Bill Vinovich said, we're basically starting a brand new game right now. And I was like, oh, okay. I never thought of it like that. It makes sense that they were. But a lot of people screwed that up. The Niners players were like, kind of news to us what the rules were. That's so embarrassing. And then a lot of the commentators, when they were doing the highlights, they were talking about the time in the first overtime ticking down. And they're like, they didn't call timeout. And it's like, why would they need to, dude? It's like basically the end of the first quarter. So a lot of people screwed that up.
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought when they got to the end of that overtime period, I'm like, why aren't they calling timeout? And,
yeah.
And then I realized, like, oh, it's just going to go into another quarter, and they would have been fine. But I was unaware and had forgotten that both teams would get a chance to possess even if there was a touchdown. And I was just surprised. It was very weird to hear 49er players clueless about what was going on, but that was weird.
Yeah, it was. It was crazy. And the whole strategy thing, do you kick the ball? Do you receive the ball? I just go back to, Chad, I'm curious how you feel about this, but, like, think about college. What do you do in college overtime? You go on defense every single time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I don't see why it's dramatically different in the NFL. There was so much conversation, and there were a lot of people saying, no, I thought Kyle Shanahan made the right move. I don't think he made the right move at all. I mean, they were lucky that there was that defensive holding penalty on Trent McDuffie. Otherwise, it would have been 4th and 13. You're faced with go for it on 4th and 13 or punt it to Mahomes, and a field goal means you lose the Super Bowl. Like, that is a rough spot to be in, and I just didn't agree with it. And I thought that immediately when Fred Warner said that, this wasn't after the game. It was right when he said, no, we want the ball. I'm like, you want the ball? Really? I'd go on defense right away.
Yeah, that's the thing, Brian. And a lot of people still don't understand it at the college level. Like when Dion did it, people thought, well, that's okay. But the thing, I don't know if you heard what Shanahan said. He said they wanted the third possession, which would mean both teams scored the same number of points on their first possessions. Then he would have the ball when it became sudden death. And my thought was, the analytics may tell you that, but you're playing against Patrick Mahomes. Do you really think you're going to be able to shut him down and hit when he has the ball? It didn't make sense to me at all.
No, I saw it the same way, Dwight, and I guess the thinking makes sense if it works out perfectly. You know what I mean? Like, if you guys score the same exact,
right?
Like, let's say the Niners kick a field goal, the Chiefs have to settle for a field goal, and then you get that next possession and it's sudden death. In a perfect world, that's great, but against the Chiefs defense, you got to score points. And let's say best case scenario, you score a touchdown. Even if Mahomes scores a touchdown, I think they most likely would go for 2. I don't know. They might go for 2. Did they say they would?
Yeah. Mahomes said that their plan from training camp was if they're second, they score the touchdown, go for 2. And that just takes Shanahan's plan right out of there's nothing left of it.
Right. It's like, I get it that, okay, you have the upper hand where you scored first. If you can prevent a touchdown, you win the Super Bowl. but you know Mahomes and the Chiefs are going for every fourth down.
Yeah.
They might not if they have the ball first, right? They have to. That's the end of the game if they don't go for it and convert. And then, like you just said, if they score a touchdown, you go for 2. You don't even get that next possession. So I just don't agree with the thinking at all.
We're talking with Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio. How about that wonderful start to the second half for the 49ers? 9 plays, 8 passes, 1 run.
It was a weird game, right? Like, it was really choppy until the muffed punt is really what did it. Like, Butker had that long field goal to make it 10-6, and then it was the muffed punt by the Niners, which led to a touchdown. And then we started to see a lot more offensive flow. Even though both teams were still kicking a lot of field goals, you saw them moving the ball a little bit more. And you look up, isn't it amazing? Like, the total was 47.5.
Yeah.
And after all of that, it ends on 47 total points. And you're just like, how in the world are they so close so often? But, yeah, for it being as choppy as it was in the first half and only 10-3, to be 1 point away from an over cover was pretty crazy.
So, Brian, I think I hear that you're still on the blast Brock Purdy train. And he's 24 years old in his second year in the league, first Super Bowl. And he brought him back 3 times in the fourth quarter. And when he left the field in the fourth quarter, they were ahead. When he left the field in overtime, they were ahead. If they get a defensive stop, he's the winner in that game. But you didn't like his play?
Well, I don't know if he's your nephew or something, Dwight. Are you guys related at all with that little intro right there? I don't know.
My opinion is the majority opinion of I think most football people.
Well, I would actually agree with that. And most of you guys are suckers because you fail to see the truth. And the truth is this, and I'll try to make it sound as non-haterish as possible, Dwight. Even though it's going to sound a little nitpicky, it's going to sound a little negative.
I can take it.
It's the truth. Here's the deal with Brock Purdy. Last night, he played really well. But he wasn't special. And the moment called for him being special. That's what it comes down to. Like, you're playing against Patrick Mahomes. It's not good enough to end up with a passer rating of 89 point something. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just make the plays that are there, that are available, and not make a special throw. When he had Deebo Samuel wide open in the end zone for a touchdown, Deebo beat Snead. The ball sails right out the back of the end zone. Why? Because, there was a little bit of a pass rush that got to Brock Purdy, and it kind of messed him up right there. Or in overtime, take your pick. He's got Juwan Jennings wide open. He's got Brandon Ayuk wide open. They screwed it up. They didn't block Chris Jones. But still, Purdy, he got rid of the ball. Nowhere near Juwan Jennings at all. Those are the special plays that need to be made. If you look at Mahomes in overtime, MVS, I don't know what he was doing. He would have gained 5 yards. He's like, how about I lose 4 instead? It's 2nd and 14. A little bit later, it ends up 3rd and 6. There's a pass rush. The Niners sell out, and Mahomes is cool as can be, just delivers the ball right to Rice. Easy first down. They convert, move the chains. Those are the special plays that Mahomes makes that Brock Purdy didn't. And so that's the disconnect. A lot of people hear that and think, I'm just unnecessarily harsh on the guy. But he just wasn't special. What special throw did he make? What special moment was there for Purdy last night?
Well,
if he's a basketball player, he would be a guy that hit a bunch of mid-range shots. Like, he got to the foul line. He scored some points that way, had a couple of nice drives to the hoop, couple of nice layups and finishes. But when it came down to it, we really needed him to hit this clutch 3. But there was a defender in his face. He couldn't do it. And we really needed this clutch shot at the very end. It would have been tough. He came up short. It's not going to fly if your opponent is Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? You can't be just really good.
Yeah,
You've got to be special, and he isn't that guy.
Well, everybody in the league is chasing. Obviously, they're chasing Mahomes. His passer rating against the Chiefs was better than Josh Allen's or Lamar Jackson's.
Well, Lamar sucked.
Yeah,
Lamar was
he
terrible.
did.
Lamar threw into triple coverage one time.
He played better against the Chiefs than the MVP did.
Well, that's one game, and Lamar was awful. So that's what's funny to me is the bar for Purdy just keeps going lower and lower. And I was thinking about this today, too. I'm like, I think Brock Purdy, where he was drafted, it actually helps him out more than it hurts him. Because there is, and I'll be fair, Dwight, there is a school of thought where people will say, especially during the regular season, if Brock Purdy was a top 5 pick and he's putting up these numbers that have him in the MVP conversation, you would have people waxing poetic about the guy. And I would admit there's a lot of truth to that. But take last night. Let's say that's Trey Lance, okay? Trey Lance is the number 3 overall pick. Let's say he's still on the team, and they traded a boatload to get him, multiple first-round picks to get him. He has the same exact performance as Brock Purdy. I think there's a lot more scrutiny if that's the case. I think it's, hey, man, it's got to be better. If I shell out a bunch of money at a restaurant, I'm expecting that meal to be great. And Brock Purdy, he's basically the $10 all-you-can-eat special. And it's like, hey, man, that's pretty good right now. Like, I think that affects how his performance last night was viewed. And so I think where he was drafted, especially last night on that stage, it helps him out way more than if he were a top 5 pick because I think people would expect a lot more if that were the case.
I agree 100%. I don't have any problem with Brock Purdy, but I just think in order to win a championship, when you get to that game, you're going to be going up against a guy like Mahomes, and that's going to require special from your quarterback, and I just don't think he can be the guy to deliver that. That's all.
That's really it, and it's nothing that's – I don't hate Brock Purdy at all. Brock Purdy's incredibly easy to like. Like, he just goes about his business. He plays with poise. He plays with passion. Like, there's nothing to dislike about him as far as my opinion is concerned. It's just his freaking fans. Oh, my gosh. These people drive me crazy because the slightest thing you say that's critical, maybe 100% true, it is just emotion, 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 and bad argument after bad argument. But come on, let's grade on the Purdy curve, and it was pretty good. Pretty good isn't good enough against Mahomes. That's the bottom line.
It's Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio here on the Rip City Drive. Patrick Mahomes, they're going to go for a three-peat now. I've already said it. He's the best quarterback I've ever seen, Brian. I know he doesn't have the rings that Tom Brady does, but just what are your overall takeaways on watching him perform on that level?
He's sensational, man. He does it again. Like, how crazy is it where you go back to last year, and we know how big of an advantage it is to have a quarterback on a rookie deal. And last year, in the playoff chase, he went through Trevor Lawrence rookie deal, Jalen Hurts rookie deal, Joe Burrow rookie deal. Like, I flip-flopped the last two, but those were the guys. They beat all those teams with quarterbacks on rookie deals at the time. And the Super Bowl this season beat Brock Purdy on a rookie deal. And we know how much that means to the rest of the roster. You can splurge in other areas. And he got it done again for a second straight year without Tyreek Hill. It's incredible what he can do. And to win a third ring in his 6th year as a starting quarterback, he's been in the AFC title game every single year. This was a team that lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day and was 9-6. Like, who thought they would be winning it all after 2 road victories and then beating the Niners, a 1 seed, and who most people think is the most talented team in the league, in the Super Bowl? It's crazy what he's been able to do through 6 years. It's better than Brady through 6 years, but I also think it's one of these where I'll throw a baseball comparison out at you. Dwight, you'll love this. You're a big baseball guy. Yet, you know when you hear like, hey, the guy's hitting 400 2.5 months into the season, and it's like, how about you wake me up when it's September? And he's probably hitting like 390, 359 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, Mahomes has been sensational. But he still has to win 4 more rings. He has to win what Montana won going forward just to match Tom Brady. Like, that is just an insane pace to maintain. But to this point, he has been electric, man.
So you're going to judge him entirely on rings then? Because Chad and I watch him. Honestly, Brian, he's doing things Tom Brady never did. And he's going to continue to do that because Tom couldn't run like he can. And he's a better athlete, no question about it. Now, he may not be as honored. He may not win as much. But I'm a guy that I agreed with Chad. The best quarterback I ever saw was John Elway. But he didn't win as many rings. He didn't have an opportunity to. He didn't have the teams or the coaching to win rings until his last 2 years in the league. But I just think in terms of a quarterback walking out on the field, if you ask me to name one I want to win a big game, I'll take Mahomes every time.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things with that, Dwight, and I hear you. I think the conversation can differ between who's the best, who's the greatest. I think there are differences right there because to me, greatest being the most decorated matters a whole lot. You ever see someone in the military and they have on their chest like all of the things, like how decorated they are? It's a little bit like how it is with quarterbacks for me.
So is Bill Russell the greatest basketball player ever to play in the NBA?
Well, now we're getting dicey because of when he was there, what the competition was like, how many teams were in the league.
Competition was great in those days.
It can get a little bit tricky when we start dissecting things like that. But in terms of Brady and in terms of Mahomes, right? I think that the rings matter a lot. I'm not going to say it matters solely, right? Like no chance Mahomes could possibly be the greatest of all time or the best of all time if he doesn't win 7 rings to at least match him. But it's got to be part of it. Like Mahomes is absolutely on the right track, but to act like he's already gotten there, that's essentially what some people are saying. Where it's like if Mahomes just said, I'm going to call it a day, I'm going to retire before I'm 30 years old, would he go down as a greater quarterback, as a better quarterback than Brady and his entire resume? I would say no. So in my mind, there's still work to be done.
I understand what you're saying about greatest or most decorated. That the greatest and the best. That makes a lot of sense to me. Brian, no Fox Sports Radio. So going into the offseason, what is your big question mark with the 49ers moving forward?
I mean, really, it's can you stay healthy enough, and can Purdy take the next step forward? That's really what it comes down to for me because they've got a ton of talent. They've got the roster to get them there. Do they have it to get over the hump right there? And look, man, it's going to sound like more Purdy bashing, but he played really well last night. You needed special. And in the 2 previous playoff games, he had some shaky moments. When it's misting a little bit against the Packers and it's like, the wet conditions screw up Purdy. It's like, well, that's not good going forward. That's an issue. And against the Lions, he had some shaky decisions and throws. And I know he came up big toward down the stretch with his legs, but like 5 quarters in the first 2 games weren't that great. And I don't know, man. I think that Purdy he's an average to good quarterback. He's somewhere in that range. But when some of these moments call for your quarterback to be special, I just don't think he's that guy. And Chad, you and I have said it. I think he's a less good-looking Jimmy G. And it was crazy to see him overthrow Deebo Samuel, a la Jimmy G overthrowing Emmanuel Sanders. And I'm like, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. If you're trying to take down Jordan, it's not going to be good enough to hit some elbow jumpers and a couple of layups and get to the free throw line. You've got to do stuff that is special.
Well, now's the sad part of the year for you, Brian. No ball for like 7 months. It sucks.
Oh, man. I know, but at least we don't have to hear about Brock Purdy for those 7 months, Chad, after he won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like that'll make the time fly by a lot faster.
You are unreasonably bothered by Brock Purdy, Brian.
No. I'm bothered by his fans. His fans are idiots. The dumb arguments I hear from that fan base, just one after another. It's the greatest hits of worst arguments of all time.
And if Shanahan could upgrade, he would tomorrow, of course.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about that. But you still have him on a cheap contract next year. You're just going to reload. And I'll tell you this, man. You talk about a bitter pill. I felt so bad so many times for Dre Greenlaw with his Achilles. After the game when the confetti is just flying down on some of the Niners who are still on the bench processing like, holy cow, we just lost the Super Bowl. To see George Kittle and the look on his face, like those guys battled. They put everything on the line. They were so close. And to not win is really tough, man. But that's just the way sports goes.
Hey, before you go, where do you come out on Tony Romo?
I tweeted something last night where, it's funny. I think the people that whine about Purdy being unnecessarily criticized, I look at that and I say, I think that argument should be applied to Tony Romo because that guy gets nothing but criticism and negativity. And I'm watching the game and I'm like, I enjoy listening to Tony Romo. I don't know if I'm the only person in this country who feels that way, but I'm like, a lot of things he says are smart. Sometimes it's funny. I think that he's on top of situations a lot more than he ever gets credit for, but it's just become so fashionable to rip on the guy. He's like the Nickelback of commentators. I think it goes way too far, man. I don't think he's nearly as bad as people make him out to be.
Nickelback is worse than Tony Romo. I'll definitely.
That's right.
I'll definitely.
Yes.
I'll go with that for sure. Well, dude, you're the best, man. We love talking ball with you, man. Good luck during your mourning process of having to be without ball for a while. But, dude, you're awesome, Brian. We love you.
Oh, man, love you guys too, man. And we'll get through it.
All right.
Chad and Dwight, we will manage. We will find a way. And ball will be back before you know it.
All right. Bino! Fox Sports Radio. Thanks, Bino.
You got it, man. You guys have a great evening.
All right. There's Brian No.
Ball's back this week. Pitchers and catchers report to spring training.
That's right. Pitchers and catchers.
Yeah.
And the Padres and Dodgers will be playing in South Korea soon.
Yeah, of all places to open with the most interesting starting lineup in years and years and years.
Thanks, Manfred. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then where's the NFL going to open up? They've got an opener on a Friday night, I think down in Brazil.
Oh, God.
I think the Eagles are in that game, but they don't know. I don't know who the opponent is, but the Eagles are playing in Brazil, and that's going to be on the Friday after the opener on Thursday.
Great.
They're outsourcing our game, dang it.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it.
All right, we'll come back and put a wrap on it. Big thanks to Brian No, Fox Sports Radio. All right, coming up after the Rip City Drive, Chris Burkhardt is in for Courtside Mondays. My high five is going to go out to Taylor Swift. She's in the middle of the Eras Tour, which is a smash success. She's a billionaire, and her boyfriend just won the Super Bowl. I mean, she's winning at all things life, so big props to her. Who's going to get your high five, Godfather?
I'm going to go with Andy Reid for having his team prepared for overtime, which appears to be a difficult thing to do because the 49ers were the opposite side of the field, and they weren't prepared for it. So kudos to Coach Reid, and not so much over on the other sideline to Kyle Shanahan.
All right, I just look back over the last 24 years of Super Bowl winners. The majority of Super Bowls, almost all of them, won by Tom Brady. Russell Wilson got one. Eli Manning had two. Peyton Manning had two. Big Ben had two. Breeze, Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. The three exceptions to the elite quarterback rule, Brad Johnson, Nick Foles, and Trent Dilfer.
Mm-hmm.
In two of those cases, Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer, they played on teams that had historic defenses, two of the best defenses of all time. For Nick Foles, that was a year where he outdueled Tom Brady, and he was surrounded by an incredible assortment of offensive weapons and a great offensive coach in Doug Peterson. So I guess my question would be, if you're going to proceed forward with Brock Purdy, then how do you get that done? How do you get over the top and win a game like that when you're going to probably be facing a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or a Justin Herbert type quarterback? That's the question. Is it loading up on defense and getting an elite defense that's historic because you can spend big right now on other parts of the team because he's making $900,000 a year? Is it continuing to load up on the offense? Do you go in that direction with that while you have the chance before the new contract?
Well, I think they've got to create some depth to to cover for all the injuries they seem to get every season. I would say you have to look for more improvement out of Brock Purdy. He's a second-year guy who had arm surgery prior to this season, or last summer at least, and you got to hope for that. That's what you got to do.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Evan Giddings and Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio. Tomorrow, Rip City Mornings at 6 with Justin Myers. Rip City Drive at 3. Game day will start at 4:30. Chris Burkhardt's got Courtside coming up next. Big thanks to Michael Shacker. Godfather, enjoy your night. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Love you, Chad.
Love you, Godfather.
Men will fight on the hill on a football Sunday, and the Kansas City Chiefs will still win. Boo. That's right. Might talk some football today. We might talk some football today. 49ers. My San Francisco 49ers. Michael Shacker's San Francisco 49ers took the L against the Kansas City Chiefs. It hurt. It hurt a lot. I only threw my hat once, but we rebounded. We're here today. Shacker, I'm hoping we can get through this. First off, I'm on the limited sleep plan. 4 hours of sleep for your, 2 hours of sleep for your boy, because he went to bed at 4 a.m. Then woke up at 6. He's burning the candle at both ends here.
Were you in Vegas?
Yeah, that's exactly. I was at the Super Bowl. Had to get on my private jet. Late night. It was the private jet the studio funded, so it was a scary little ride, turbulence the entire way. But that's where I was. That's right. But no, the last couple weeks have been very hectic, right? We've done some last minute changes, moved some courtside around. So I wasn't here last week. I wasn't here the week before that as we were, changing some things up. And I'm back now. So hopefully I'm not too rusty. Hopefully we can get through this. I mean, the Niners, they had 2 weeks off, and then they couldn't score football. They had to throw the ball to their wide receiver and have him throw it into the end zone to score a touchdown. It was terrible. Oh, let's look at some YouTube real quick. And I know this is some of it's catching up. It has nothing to do with me. Talking a little bit about what happened there with Chad in the previous show. Can we talk about Tony Romo for a second? Can we talk about? I hate being that guy. I don't like talking on the guys in our industry, the talking heads and such. But Tony Romo was bad. Like, he was bad. Like, let me just say the most obvious thing, and then let me talk when, I could, let stuff breathe. Like, the 30-second rant at the end on the game-winning score, like the broadcasting 101, let the crowd do the talking, right? Let the crowd do the talking. Like one of my favorite calls. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Red Sox are world champions. It's a great call by Buck. Now, could you imagine as Fenway faithful are just going nuts? His color guy just comes in and goes, "Oh, yeah, man, that was a great out. The way that they went down there and they got the ball and he threw it to Doug Minkiewicz, it was just picture perfect, Joe. You got to give them credit for how they play." No, just let it breathe. Let it breathe, Tony. I mean, I didn't watch a lot. I saw some highlights. I mean, SpongeBob and Patrick, I thought they did a pretty good job. I saw videos of Dora the Explorer explaining what a holding call was. Pretty genius there for old Nickelodeon. But that game was brutal. And we're going to get into two Blazer talk. I assure you, this is just the first time in front of the mic. I got to get 49er talk off my chest. But we will talk about, I haven't had a chance to talk about it with you guys, so we're going to talk about Dame's return, which was now a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. But we got to talk about that. It was a pretty eventful night at Moda. And then also talk about the trade deadline that went down last week and see what the Blazers did or did not do. We'll get your thoughts on it if you want to join the conversation and talk maybe 49ers Chiefs or Blazers trade deadline or what have you. You know what to do, 503-248-0620. Or go to youtube.com, type in Rip City Radio, and we'll pop right up and you can get your comments off in the chat there. Have some fun with it. No, but this game, my boys, Dwight and Chad, and then every other talking head. I walked in here right now before the show, Shacker. I don't know, you heard me. Mics were off. I looked Chad dead in the eye. I said, "Get out of my chair. You make me sick." he just looks at me like, "Whoa, Burkhart, coming in hot." And I go, "Your guys' Brock Purdy hate. I can't deal with it."
Just hate on his Broncos. That's all you need to do. If you ever have any anger towards them, just rip on the Broncos. Where were they this year in the postseason?
Yeah, the closest they got to the Lombardi Trophy was John Elway walking down the line there to hand it over to the next guy in line with that corny smile of his. All right, yeah, Chad, that's where the Broncos were. I thought Brock Purdy played well. Faced a lot of pressure, especially late in that game. Kansas City drew it up. Defense was on point. Got to give old Andy Reid credit. He knows what he's doing. Mike Shanahan, he knows what he's doing until overtime in the Super Bowl hits. And apparently he didn't go over the game plan for that one because nobody knew what the overtime rules were. Now, funny enough, people are going to dog Shanahan, and they should. He's an NFL coach, right? NFL coach should know the NFL rules. But I do know that as soon as they went to overtime, everyone at my Super Bowl party, at least, they looked at each other and they're like, aren't there new rules for Super Bowl? Like, what are the rules? And then someone had to, explain it, the one person that knew it. Because no one knows. And why do you have certain overtime rules for the rest of the playoffs, but they're different in the Super Bowl? And then they're slightly different in the regular season because you end in a tie. It's just weird. Just weird. Yeah, they didn't bash him as much. They held back. Lisa. But Noah's a Purdy hater, and I might have to text the man when we're done because I don't know why. He called him average. The numbers he put up this year were anything but average. Some of the balls he throws, anything but average. I don't know if they would have won, I definitely would not have put Brock Purdy in the Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, Nick Foles category, which is what Chad was doing there, which is also interesting, though, because, Brad Johnson was a pretty good quarterback, right? So was Trent Dilfer for a time. Nick Foles had one good little tiny run there. But no, I loved Brock Purdy. And I, as a 49er fan, everyone wants to find excuses. Oh, it was Christian McCaffrey's fault. He didn't run enough. It was Debo's fault. It was George Kittle's fault. I actually thought they played one hell of a game. And if the Chiefs are so good, Shacker, the Chiefs are so good that they're back-to-back champs, and everyone's talking about, can they go win it 3 times in a row with the greatest quarterback to ever play the game? Took them overtime and right down to the wire to beat the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers played a hell of a game. One hell of a game. Easy to nitpick when your teams lose. But did Brock Purdy play bad? Heck no. He played better than he played in the previous 2 playoff games. And also, you know what he did in those previous 2 playoff games? Did what great quarterbacks do. They were getting walloped by the Green Bay Packers, and he turned it on in the second half. They were getting doors blown off by the Lions. Brock Purdy turned it on. Had a good game. He had a good game in this one, too. Not everyone played well. The biggest key to me, though, Lisa, you could chime in. You were watching the game. Biggest key to me in this one, I think it changed the entire game, and it's not getting enough talk because everyone wants to focus on Purdy because quarterbacks, they get the praise when they win, and they're the fall guy when the team loses. The biggest difference in this game happened when that freak injury happened to Greenlaw. When Greenlaw went in there and has what a reported possible Achilles injury, and he was done for the game, that was when the Kansas City Chiefs targeted his replacement. Weren't getting as much heat on the quarterback as they were with him in there. He was a highlight reel for the first few plays of that game. I thought he was the best player on defense for most of the playoffs. Outperformed my guy Fred Warner, who I love. Outperformed Bosa, who's been great. Greenlaw was a stud. So when he got hurt, that was terrible. Really changed the dynamic. If you had him and you still had Hufanga, who's been out all year, things would look a little bit different. This is what I do. I come here and I hit this mic and I talk myself through the pain that has been the last 22 hours dealing with this one. How'd you handle it, Shacker? I know you're a Niner guy, too.
I did good. I wish you were doing this show mid-June, talking about, the Blazers came so close.
One day, man, one day. We will be here.
But, yeah, I took it bad, but, I'm moving on. I had such a fun season. I've been watching football since August when the preseason started.
Yes.
Loved every minute of it. Bummed that the Niners didn't win. Can't wait till the next season.
Just knowing you, I'm glad that you got to watch the Super Bowl and you're not like, I was so busy. I have it taped, so don't ruin it for me.
I had to watch it with people who aren't football fans, so I had earbuds in so I could hear the radio call.
Okay.
So when everyone's complaining about Romo today, I didn't even hear any of that.
Well, you got lucky then. He was not good. He was not good. He started out really good. People loved him because he was breaking down the plays. He was calling them before they happened, and now he's just trying so hard to keep doing that. Like, you know what's going on? Just talk about that. Sometimes you make some stuff up. Like, oh, man, I don't know if that was really a first down. Let's look at the replay. What are you talking about? He got the first down by 2 yards easy, and you're over. I don't know, Jim. That's close. That's really close. you need to go get your contacts checked, my man. Like, are you looking at the wrong feed? Did you get bored and put a highlighter on the screen that you look at, and that's what you think is the real yellow line because you can't differentiate it from the one that's on the screen superimposed? Like, come on now, Tony. Come on now. Be smart. It was a good game, though, fans. It was a good game. I thank you for tuning into this Blazer show and allowing me to vent for it. Makes me feel good. Talk my way through the pain that was watching my San Francisco 49ers once again lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I still don't have a Super Bowl victory that I can remember. Yes, the 94-95 season, but I was 8 going on 9. I don't remember it. The only thing I remember from that game is the image of Steve Young, right? He won. I remember that. It was like Jordan with the trophy, Kobe with the trophy. I remember Steve Young post game. That's all I remember. But in my adulthood, I remember losing to the Ravens, losing to the Chiefs, losing to the Chiefs again. Life is pain. Pain is life. Kudos to the Chiefs, though. Travis Kelce was great. Taylor Swift was great. Give her props. Jason Kelce might be the most entertaining man in America, at least the most loved by so many. It was kind of nice. Yes, Mika, it was terrible. Did get good reviews for my talk Purdy to me T-shirt. I still I was thinking during that game too, Mika, that everyone's talking about the tush push, right? The Phillies thing. I think if the Niners ever get into a situation where they got to do a tush push, it's no longer the tush push. It's the dirty Purdy, right? You need to gain 1 yard. It's time to run the dirty Purdy right up the middle. See what you get. I would have liked to see it in this game. Unfortunately, wasn't in the cards. There's always next year, though, right? Right? That's what we tell ourselves to get through it. Football's awesome. Football's awesome. Except when you're a Duck and a Niner fan in the same year and you have to swallow losing to the Huskies twice and then losing the Super Bowl. Things are tough. Could be worse, though. Could not even been in the playoffs. So I'll take that trip to the Super Bowl. It was kind of nice. It was kind of nice. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on, what show is this again? Oh, that's right, Courtside Monday with Chris Burkhardt. I'm all over the place. I don't even know what show I'm hosting, I had to do the Blazers pregame show last week, which I'll be doing again tomorrow, by the way. It was really hard to cut to break and not say on Rip City Radio 620. Yeah, got to get used to that. There's too much going on. When we come back, though, friends, we are going to talk Blazers. I promise you, so don't go anywhere. Chris Burkhardt here, talking Blazers on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into Courtside Monday. Chris Burkhart here with you. Having a little bit of fun at my 49ers expense. Yeah, that's right. Ripped me in two. Shacker's very good when it comes to picking songs. Rough night. Rough night. But now it is time to talk Portland Trailblazers. And before we get into the main topic, and that is kind of what the Blazers did at the trade deadline and how things are going to go on moving forward as they enter, the last handful of games here, we got to talk about Dame's return, which was almost 2 weeks ago now. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk with you guys because I missed a courtside because we were shuffling the deck chairs, so to speak, right? And all moving parts going on here. And I got to talk about it, how we felt, and how did you it was special, right? I thought it was special. Everyone asked, what was it like being in the arena for that? And the atmosphere in Moda was great, right? It felt like a playoff game. The place was packed. Fans were on their feet most of the night. They brought the energy. The Blazers got the win over the Bucks. Nobody saw that coming, right? You spoiled Dame's return, but at the same time, it was all cathartic, right? Because you just got to get it all out. You got to share your love, show your love from Dame. I always thought that was the hardest part of the way the things went down, is because the Blazers went into a tank season again. Sidelined him just a handful of games after he had dropped 70. And then what was Dame's final game in a Blazer uniform, nobody at the time knew that they were watching Dame's final game in a Blazer uniform. So you didn't have that closure, right? At least it didn't feel like it. And then he comes back and you get to shower him with praise. And you get to have that closure that you talked about, that you wanted, right? So I thought that was great. And then the fact that the Blazers come in and get the win is even better. Even better. Shacker, you better make sure you fix that YouTube, or my daughter's going to yell at you. If she's only looking at B back screen, she's going to be mad, okay? I'm just having fun with you. I'm having way too much fun.
Is she a Niner fan?
Is she a Niner fan? No. My 1-year-old, it's cute. My wife sends me videos now and then because she'll yell at the TV when she sees me on YouTube, because my wife will put the YouTube on the TV, and she'll Dad, and she'll just wave at the TV. So I wave back now and then when she's watching. So if Tegan's watching, Dad's waving back. So I got to keep you on your toes. I don't care if you want to put the slate up the whole time. That's fine, but you don't got to worry about me. Got to worry about my daughter. And trust me, my daughters don't want to mess with those three. They'll get you. They will get you. They keep me on my toes. That's for sure. But back to Dame. I thought it was special. I thought it was special, and I thought the fans did too. Just because I hadn't seen that all year long. Just the love, right? And everyone just at Moda, smile on their face. And I think it would have been the same win or lose, right? I posted about a picture that some friends of mine and what they call the third bench, a group of Blazer fans who just got together and all bought season tickets in the same spot. So they go, 10, 15 at a time sometimes, taking a picture and just enjoying it, right? And that's special. And to me, that game really, really did kind of put the stamp down, proving what Rip City's all about, right? Because for that one game, it was about Dame and it was about Rip City at the end of the day. And all these fans coming together, finally getting their chance to, I think, really, truly, finally move on and just enjoy Blazer fandom. And I think it was Casey Holdall, Trailblazers insider, who you'll be able to hear right after this show with the latest episode of Blazers Balcony, pointed out that, that's why the Blazers need to turn the corner and be good again. Because when you get that type of atmosphere, you're reminded of how special Portland can be when things are going good, right? And now the season hasn't been going good as a whole. They're in rebuild mode. We know that. But for that one moment in time on a random Wednesday in January to start off 2024, in a season that had been full of downs, Rip City was up. Rip City was up. You were reminded in that moment what it means to be a part of Rip City. And it also shows you the power of Dame because even in another uniform, look what he did. I think he gave back. I think he gave back to Portland in a very special Dame way, in a way that only he can. So that was a unique game. And it's right up there with all the games that we've covered, right? The .9s, the bad shots, right? It's up there with those. And the emotion in that building was completely different, though. And you weren't cheering on like the one specific shot, right? Or the one specific victory. You were just cheering just in the moment and living within that moment. Like I said, I think in that game, people got to close the door on the Dame chapter finally the way they wanted to, and then move on. And then we're reminded about how special Portland can be. It's a unique game. It's one of those games I think if you were there, you're going to remember that one. You're not going to remember how many points Dame had or who had the most points for the Blazers, but you're going to remember the vibe inside Moda. So it was a special one. It was a special one. By the way, Shacker, my wife texted me. She said, thank you. She said my daughter was watching on the phone, and when Dad wasn't on the screen, she threw the phone.
Oh, no. We put them on the air. I want to hear what they have to say about the Blazers now that we're approaching All-Star break.
Well, they won't have much to say about the Blazers. They probably won't have much to say about the 49ers. They'll have plenty to say about, Gabby's Dollhouse and Bluey and what's going on in Minecraft. But other than that, right now that they have, I'll tell you what, they'll have hot takes on homework. I'll tell you that much. They are throwing fits at the house today because doing homework is the worst thing man ever invented.
Or a hot take on the J-Lo commercial. Seems like that's all they talked about in sports talk today.
I just want to know how much money Temu or Timu, however you want to pronounce it. It's one of those ones. How much money did they dump in? They had like 10 commercials. So I don't think I saw the J-Lo one.
It was Dunkin' Donuts with Ben Affleck.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was just too focused in on the game because the Niners were playing. I was like, halftime show, meh. Commercials, man, just get me back to the action. Kudos to Usher, though. He did pretty good. The first half was a little squirrely. It might have fell off. But they won. They won over the hearts of everyone when they turned it into a skate world couple skate, right? I mean, the only thing it was missing was a rose for him to hand out to any of the other people on the stage. You had the slow dance vibes. The skates were out. They were skating in circles. It was skate world, man. You could have closed your eyes. You would have thought you were in Gresham. Chad would have loved it. Oh, man. So they have takes on homework. That's what they have takes on. But, yeah, that was my thoughts on the Dame game. Wanted to get those out because, again, that was special. And if you were there, I think you understand what I mean by that. So thank you to Dame. Because, again, I think Dame was part of that, the reason it was special. He wasn't even wearing a Blazer uniform, which is crazy. Now there have been some reports of him coming out saying he wouldn't mind joining the ownership group one day. Can you imagine an ownership group a decade from now? Damian Lillard, C.J. McCollum, the front of that group? That's a question. Money not an option. What Blazer do you think would make a good owner or you would want as part of your ownership group? Dame would be up there, CJ be up there. And if we're going all Blazers, you got to get like a starting five, right? So you got to get Steve Blake and the Vanilla Gorilla Joel Prisbilla, right? They got to be in there. I mean, Steve Blake, you got to let him be an owner because he liked the Blazers so much. He left and came back like 10 times. I mean, that's love, right? You're like, no matter how many times you try to get rid of me, I'm going to keep coming back. And then Joel Prisbilla is on like the all-time I love him for being a Blazer team. I don't care what his stats were. He's my guy. I'm going to ride or die for him. And so you got one more spot to fill. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? That's a good question. Wouldn't mind. I give it to a local kid who was one of my favorite players growing up, Mighty Mouse, Damon Stoudemire. Let him come in, give back to the community. That'd be great. Now, the other thing that's happened since I last got to talk to you guys was the NBA trade deadline. That came and went last week. Everybody was looking at your Portland Trailblazers because I think everybody and their mother thought that Malcolm Brogdon was likely going to be traded. And it made sense, right? Big money deal. He's playing very, very well. And I thought he was going to be traded simply because you look at all the playoff teams, and I'm like, yeah, he'd be good in Denver. Oh, the Knicks, they traded Emmanuel quickly when they got the OG Anunoby deal. He makes sense there. Oh, I think the Pacers could use him. He makes sense there. Philly could use him. He makes sense. And so you're looking at all these playoff teams. You're like, Malcolm Brogdon makes sense. It's all about just making the money work, but he makes sense. And then the deals started happening, right? Oh, the Knicks made a trade, and they shored up their guard rotation with it. Yeah, so they're out on the Malcolm Brogdon deal. Oh, Philly, they got into a deal with Indy, and Buddy Hield's on the move. They shored up their bench problems with their guard depth. So everyone that you kind of thought was in on it was making those moves, right? Even Miami, who everyone jokes, there's no way Riley's picking up the phone if Joe Cronin calls. But they were, I thought, in play as well because Malcolm Brogdon just made perfect sense. But they got in on Terry Rozier, who makes sense for them as well. So all these teams that were kind of making sense for Malcolm Brogdon were kind of going out the door. So as that started to happen, I thought the reality was at that moment in time was like, yep, he's not getting traded, right? Also, when you're starting to see these bench guards, which is what Malcolm Brogdon is right now, good enough to start, but got to remember, reigning sixth man of the year. You aren't the sixth man if you're in the starting lineup all the time. When you're seeing these trades happen and they're going for multiple second-round picks and cap filler, okay, when that's the trades that are going down, like, okay, maybe moving off of Brogdon is not the best deal right now. Blazers don't need second-round picks and cap filler to get off of Malcolm Brogdon. When the trade happened for Malcolm Brogdon, everyone talked about the possibility of him being traded. It was like first-round pick was what went in your mind. Now, I know patience, it's a hard thing sometimes. And Blazer fans, oh, you realistically think that you're going to get more in the offseason than you were going to get at this trade deadline? It's stupid if you didn't trade him. I'm here to tell you why it's not. Because there is a chance that you can get more in the offseason. Absolutely there is. Think about how rosters restructure. You have teams right now that have a nice guard rotation that they like, but come the end of the season, so-and-so hits free agency or they make a trade. Now they have the whole Malcolm Brogdon makes sense. Boom. A team that maybe wasn't a player on February 9th is a player now. You have draft picks that get reset and the Stepien rules and all these things that shuffle the deck a little bit and give you different players, right? So you might get more. But the thing is, I don't think there's any situation where you get less. So panic move right now and take 2 second-round picks and cap filler, or take this into the offseason, see if you can get more. If the market says no, you still have what you could have got at the trade deadline anyway. But to me, it's the smarter move, right? Because right now you're telling me that the cap was basically, those second-round picks and fill, when in the offseason, that might be the bottom, right? There's a chance. This might still lean that way, but there's a chance to get more. Things reset. The way the CBA is going to kick in, there's so many factors here that I don't think that one is a complete loss. I don't. What's a complete loss in any of this is if you let a guy like him with value just walk, which I don't think they're going to do. I like where they're going. I still understand what the purpose is here. It's to build something in the long run here. Got to get Scoot going, got to get Shea going, who's quite honestly might not play again this season after he had to undergo surgery to address that core injury of his. Malcolm Brogdon is out now for another 2 weeks dealing with tendonitis in the elbow. But I understand what the team did, okay? Not getting rid of Malcolm Brogdon, some people upset. To me, the smart move. Don't just sell to sell. Make sure you're going to get the deal that benefits you the most. I think that's what they're doing. Now, they did make a deal in all this, and I don't know if you were shocked or not, but they did make a deal with the Boston Celtics for a heavily protected second-round pick from the Blazers shipped out to Boston in return for Delano Banton, right? Who? Delano Banton. I, too, had to look it up. I was like, okay, there's a name you don't hear all the time. What's he going to do? How's he going to fit in? It's one of those low-risk moves. We're going to send you this second-round pick, which basically might not convey because it's basically top 55 protected is what I believe it was. And you get a guy in here who, again, like all these risks reward type moves, there's upside there. He's been in the league for a little bit, hasn't really shown major flashes, but he's played decently, and maybe you can get him and turn him into something. Do they? We'll wait and see. But so far, through two years, spent time in Toronto, spent time in Boston, he's averaging 3.5 points, 1.3 assists, 1.7 rebounds. A lot of that just garbage time minutes, the occasional start here and there. But Blazers threw him into situations in his very first game where they said, hey, you can go just have a ball, more or less, right? Just go do your thing. We are low on bodies, and we need someone who can get in there. I mean, come on. They're playing Haggins right now, who's a 10-day contract guy. So the roster's thin. So Banton gets in and played decently. I thought he played decently. He had, 12 points in the game, and you're like, oh, whoa, a little bit of flash here and there. What do the Blazers got here? Is he the difference between a championship and not? No. But in the situations right now, you spent nothing but a second-round pick to take a flyer on a guy, and he's young like everyone else. Maybe he can develop. We'll see. But in his first game as a Blazer, 12 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 25 minutes of action. And for a guy like that who hasn't had a lot of opportunity, you get opportunity. It's got to be pretty nice. It's got to be pretty nice. But don't take it from me. Take it from Delano Banton. He talked to the media after the game, and here is what he had to say. I got to make sure everything's set up here. Make sure you ever go to play the audio and then go, oh, yeah, the audio's muted, Burkhart. It's not. It's going to hear. So here's what Delano Banton had to say following his Blazer debut. Yeah, there you go. There is Delano Banton following his Blazer debut. Good on him. Good on him. He sounds like a guy who's just excited to get an opportunity. And some of these guys, you give them an opportunity that they haven't had before, and they'll thrive. So we'll continue to see what he does. It's always nice to just get a little fresh blood in there, get a little excitement. And again, he had 12 points, 3 rebounds. He looked pretty exciting, all things considered, in his first game. All right, if you want to join in on the conversation, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. And we head out to the phones right now where we got Rich in Vancouver. Rich, welcome into Courtside. The floor is yours.
Hello. Hey, listen, I've been hearing you guys talk. I'm a radio fan.
Okay.
And I understand we got like 4 draft picks coming up in the next draft. Is that your understanding?
Right now they have their own pick and they have the Warriors pick, so they're going to have 2 lottery picks for sure. See what their situation is with second-round picks as well. But the 2 lottery picks are what we're focused on.
Okay, well, what's out there? Who are they going to pick? I mean, is there somebody that's going to make a difference, or are we talking about another Shane Sharp? who's going to be hurt all the time or whatever.
Well, Rich, thanks for the call. And there's guys out there for sure, and especially if the Blazers are in their current situation. Right now, they're locked in. If the season were to end right now, at the best odds of getting the 5th overall pick. Ideally, you'd love the math to play out to get just a little bit higher because there's some good names in this draft. I know Alexander Sarr is the one that everybody's watching, a 7'1" center out of France. Very, very athletic, got a great skill set. Also, another name that's starting to get a lot of buzz in mock drafts, small forward too, a guy the Blazers would love, and that is Cody Williams, brother of, I believe, Jalen Williams, who's having a very good year with Oklahoma City, and some say he's more athletic and just NBA ready too. So no, there's names out there. There's names out there, absolutely. It's all about watching to see where it all falls, because having 2 lottery picks as it stands right now puts the Blazers in a very, very good position. Think about one of the last times they had 2 lottery picks. I think they took a guy named Myers Leonard at 11. I don't know how that one worked out, but the other guy that they picked, his name was Damian Lillard in that draft. That one worked out pretty darn good. So we'll see where this one goes for your Portland Trail Blazers. Going to take a quick break here. When we come back, as my wife loves when I say, we're going to put a little bow on this show. Get you ready for a big game tomorrow against the Timberwolves. Chris Burkhardt here on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into Courtside Monday, where Shacker gets in my ear and goes, "You're on YouTube." He doesn't want to get yelled at by Tegan. He doesn't want another phone thrown. So good. See, you know what I like about Shacker? He learns fast. That's the type of guy you got to keep around. This is Chris Burkhardt. You can follow me on X at Chris J. Burkhardt. You can join the conversation over at youtube.com. Type in Rip City Radio and get the conversation going there. Or you can do the phone, 503-248-0620. We got just a few minutes left, so let's head out to the phones. We're friend of the show, friend of Courtside, friend of Game Day, friend of everything Rip City Radio. Tall Tim is on the line. Tall Tim, the floor is yours.
Courtside Monday. You know, I used to call, like, I guess decades ago. So it's good to see it's kind of made its way back in Blazerland.
It is. We're keeping it alive. We are keeping it alive.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I saw the kid that we got from Boston on Saturday, and you know what they had, like 2 plays, 3 plays,
right?
But that guy knows how to get downhill, and you know, and again, we don't know, you know, what kind of role he's going to have, you know, with the pecking order and all that, but I think being 6'8", I mean, he could, once he develops some rapport with Ayton, that's a good lob pass, right? Because he's already a threat, and being tall like that, that's a lot easier to get that ball up there without getting, you know, somebody ticking it off on you. And I was surprised at his lateral movement on defense, because some guys like that can just get taken off the dribble. But I thought he was pretty good, so I think overall he has to get a shot. Okay, that's probably his Achilles heel, right? If he can't get a shot, then he's not going to get minutes. But if he can get a shot, he might be able to come in and be a guy that can do something. So he's not a bad for 52 protected draft pick.
Right.
In the second round.
You basically gave up nothing for him, and second round picks can be bought with candy, if we're being honest. So, you take a flyer on a guy and you see how good he can be. So I like it. It's not a bad move at all, and appreciate the call, Tim. As always, you're always welcome back. Courtside will carry on. Just for you and everybody else. Right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, man. Have a good one. The music means it's about time to wrap this bad boy up, though. We got to roll. It's been fun. Tomorrow, Chad will have Blazers game day for you at, math tells me 4:30. 6 o'clock, Blazers pregame show. Yours truly getting the chance to host that one again. And then a 7 o'clock tip, Blazers taking on the Timberwolves in the first of 2 games against Minnesota this week. As always, I've been Chris Burkhardt. Rip City, you've been amazing. But before we go, I got to tell you one thing. Even after a Super Bowl loss, I love you.